This is needed for a villainous aristocrat, a story of a man with evil charisma. A young man who's lived in modern Japan suddenly realized that he had been reborn in his favorite fantasy novel, The Tale of the Reincarnated Kingdom. Yet he wasn't reborn as the protagonist, but as the famous villainous marquis in the story. With the fate of being overthrown looming above him, he takes all action to break free of his determined fate by using his future knowledge along with the strongest skill, absolute evil. If you want more full story recaps like this, like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's get into it. Dark energy radiates from a young boy's clenched fists as he roars at an unseen threat, ready to tear apart anyone who touches his family. A light-haired boy stares in shock at the violence. The furious dark-haired heir calms his voice, ordering them to hear his reasons first, promising he might even forgive them. An accusing voice cuts through the hall, calling the attackers insignificant fools. The dark-haired boy stands rigid while his companions declare that laying a hand on the Ark family means picking a fight with all of them. A cold voice echoes through the chaos, ordering the attackers to be gone before he remembers their faces. The bullies scatter in sheer terror, stumbling over each other to flee. Doors slam shut, leaving the dark-haired heir standing in quiet satisfaction. On the floor, 5 children huddled together, trembling and sweating under the undeniable weight of his dominance. Abreuto releases his crushing aura, letting his companions collapse in relief. The 5 cowering children immediately drop to the floor, bowing deeply to apologize for tarnishing the Ark faction's name. Abreuto reaches out and gently touches the trembling light-haired boy's shoulder. The boy flinches, then looks up with tear-filled eyes, his terror melting into raw relief. Abreuto addresses the boy from the Jose Count's family, who tearfully explains he couldn't rebel against the higher-ranked nobles. He takes full responsibility, begging Abreuto to spare the others from punishment. Lady Cruel interrupts with a curtsy, explaining that Chris protected them and took the injuries, begging for mercy on his behalf. Abreuto simply stares and says, "Well?" Chris screams in frustration while Abreuto coldly cuts through the panic, declaring that the incident is the fault of every single one of them combined. He locks eyes with them and asks if they know why. Chris guesses it is because they are lower ranked, but Abreuto corrects him with brutal contempt. They should have known their poor reputation would invite disdain, leaving Chris crumpled on the floor in pure terror. Chris breaks down, screaming that acting like villains is necessary for their role. Abreuto doesn't flinch, just cuts through the breakdown with a single devastating question: why didn't they wait for him? Abreuto states that if he had been there, he never would have let the bullies have their way. He points out that even without finishing his training, his mere presence was enough to scare off overwhelmingly powerful opponents. Abreuto reiterates that they are all responsible for the disaster. A wave of pure dread washes over the kneeling children as he prepares to deliver his final verdict. Abreuto points a finger and lays down a new rule. From now on, they will stay within his sight at all Academy events. He tells them to consider this their lesson. Abreuto snaps that this protection is strictly for the sake of the Ark family, not for them. Chris bursts into tears of gratitude, and Abreuto turns away to tell him to remember one last thing. Abreuto delivers his final, non-negotiable command. They are never to separate from him without permission. The stunned children shout a terrified, unified yes. Abreuto leans forward, eyes blazing as he roars that this is the duty of those who stand above. The children stare up at him, completely broken by a mixture of shame and desperate reverence. A bruised young man groans in the ruins, looking up at a dark hooded figure looming in the smoke. When he asks who the attacker is, the figure just smirks and asks who he thinks he is. The hooded figure steps into the moonlight, revealing sharp, predatory eyes. He holds up 3 fingers and declares that he is evil, just like them. Abreuto thrusts his hand forward, unleashing a vortex of dark energy that violently sucks the light-haired noble down into a swirling abyss. A quiet, opulent room interrupts the battle as an old-fashioned telephone begins to ring, shattering the silence. In an elegant mansion, a maid welcomes the master home and introduces his son. An older woman smiles with rehearsed warmth, while the young man steps forward with cold eyes to say they finally meet. A voice marvels at a baby's terrifying magical power and perfect compatibility with the Ark family's secret arts. The infant is lifted into the air and named Abreuto, burdened with a legacy and a difficult path from his first breath. Abreuto clashes blades with a young trainee in the courtyard, calling an end to the session with sharp, focused movements. The boy snaps to attention in loyal acknowledgement. Abreuto's eyes burn with cold intensity as he declares himself the son of a merchant, his knuckles white around the hilt of his sword in a defiant challenge to the world. Abreuto wakes up in an unfamiliar world, eventually reading a book that reveals he has been reincarnated into a popular fantasy novel. The chilling reality crashes down on him. He is the black villain, the antagonist destined to plunge the citizens of Lanana into despair. Aburyudo realizes he is the doomed villain, staring down a predetermined death at the hands of the hero Hitsuji Arudo. He identifies the original character's fatal flaw: he didn't have any allies. Memories surface of the original villain sitting alone on his throne as lower-ranked nobles abandon him for the protagonist, leading to his inevitable defeat. Aburyudo watches a similar training session, absolutely refusing to accept that fate. Aburyudo crystallizes his two options: befriend the hero or overcome him. He instantly dismisses the first path out of pure hatred, vowing to play the villain to the fullest but refusing to lose. Aburyudo trains with deadly focus, eliminating every variable before the original story even begins, vowing to become an absolute evil who actually wins. Aburyudo explodes forward, declaring he will crush the protagonist with such terrifying willpower that his sparring partner immediately surrenders in shock. Aburyudo announces his strategy to gather trustworthy comrades first, fixing the original villain's fatal flaw. His companions watch in awe as his sheer conviction hits them like a shockwave. Aburyudo realizes his absolute evil skill requires him to be hated to gain power, but his armored friends immediately wave off his apologies, shouting their fierce support. His companions declare their loyalty, while his sparring partner praises his terrifying growth. Aburyudo acknowledges the praise, his skill supernaturally absorbing power with every strike. Aburyudo reviews his versatile power set, from healing and barriers to close combat, all fueled by his relentless training and the brutal growth of his absolute evil skill. Aburyudo smirks, finding the game engaging as he prepares to gather allies, but a sudden summons from his father cuts his momentum short. Aburyudo stands before his father, Viren, in the family study. Viren praises his training but delivers a sharp reminder to keep polishing himself for the role of family head. Viren declares his ambition to make the Arc family the most powerful in the kingdom, making Aburyudo realize his father is a proper villain. After a brief moment of childish happiness at the praise, Viren shifts to the main topic. Viren orders Aburyudo to attend Prince Michael's 10th birthday party, triggering a cold realization that the prince sided with the protagonist in the original story. Viren warns him to behave and stay quiet, replacing Aburyudo's excitement with heavy caution. Viren's advisor notes, Aburyudo's level has already exceeded 40, prompting Viren to calculate how his son's future power will easily crush rival families, noting his own terrifying reputation but lack of popularity. Aburyudo walks through the estate, internalizing his father's lesson that popularity means nothing compared to the undeniable power of violence. Chris Jose watches Aburyudo walk away, sweating through a growing dread that fear alone will never be enough to secure the family's loyalty forever. At the capital's royal castle, a lavish banquet is underway. The arrival of the king and prince silences the room and sends Chris into a panic. Aburyudo steps forward with flawless courtly grace to introduce himself to Duke Ku, who recognizes the young Arc heir with a faint, challenging smile. Count Jose and Chris approach, sparking a crackling tension that Aburyudo meets with an unreadable mask before turning and walking away in complete silence. Aburyudo greets Count Jose, who nervously shoves a terrified Chris forward to pay his respects. Aburyudo just stares at them in a long, heavy silence. Aburyudo breaks the silence to ask Chris's name, delivering a cold, transactional introduction that leaves Chris spiraling in dread over his family's precarious position. Aburyudo declares his strategy to build connections with the younger generation first, laying out a cold, calculated plan to secure the Art family's future and avoid its predicted destruction. Viren dismisses his son from the adult party. Aburyudo doesn't argue. He turns on his heel and walks toward the younger guest's floor, his resolve hardening with every step. The moment Aburyudo steps into the hall, the atmosphere shatters. Whispers ripple through the crowd, kids point, freeze, and scurry to the opposite side of the room. Aburyudo stands perfectly still in the center of the panic. His eyes catch the light with a predatory gleam. He isn't wounded by the fear, he's cataloging it. A boy on a raised platform points down at the lower-ranking children who didn't run fast enough. He mocks their underground family status, laughing as his entourage joins in. Down below, the kids shrink away. But Aburyudo's eye sharpens like a blade. He watches the bully make himself visible, his expression cold and calculating. The bullies scream at the huddled lower-ranked kids to get out, specifically targeting Chris. One of them grabs Chris, shaking him and snarling about lowering the dignity of the party. Chris's face twists in pain. Above them, Aburyudo stands alone in the shadows, watching the cruelty unfold in dead silence. "What are you doing?" The voice cuts through the hall like shattering glass. The bullies freeze, their casual cruelty snuffed out by pure terror. Sweat beads on their faces as they stare at the towering figure of Aburyudo Arc. His shadow engulfs the platform. He says nothing, but his arrival is a death sentence for their pride. Chris's eyes widen in shock as Aperudo's voice echoes through the stunned room. Let me ask again. Aperudo steps onto the raised platform. His polished shoe hits the floor with a heavy, final thud. He isn't just walking up to them, he's claiming the high ground, asserting absolute authority over every child in the hall. The party politics vanish, replaced by a sun-dappled garden. Aperudo stands before a young noblewoman, a swirling vortex of water and wind magic dancing above his open palm. He explains the application of the elements with cold, instructional focus. The young nobles watch, completely captivated by the sheer display of calculated power. The noblewoman's breath catches as a crystalline star of pure water magic forms in Aperudo's hands, sparkling with impossible precision. The other children stare wide-eyed. It isn't just raw power, it's absolute control. Even the cynical boy beside her whispers his awe, his earlier doubts completely stripped away by the elegance of the spell. Aperudo accepts the awestruck praise without blinking. He pivots to Chris, instructing him to focus on his fire magic and develop his strengths. Chris, stunned by the direct attention and guidance, snaps to attention. He shouts his renewed loyalty, declaring Aperudo his absolute master. The recruitment has begun. Months later, the atmosphere has completely shifted. Chris and the young lady who once opposed Aperudo now stand by his side, having formally apologized. Under his command, they organize magic training and tea parties, actively uniting the younger nobles. Aperudo watches his growing influence with a calculating gaze as another hesitant boy steps into his orbit. Chris corners Aperudo on a cobblestone path, demanding to know about the magic used at the party. Aperudo meets his gaze calmly. Chris's eyes widen in a stark, sweating realization. It was healing magic. The confirmation hits him like a physical blow. Aperudo just watches, fully aware of the unprecedented danger his talent represents. Two maids offer a break, interrupting the intense training. Aperudo turns with a calm expression as Chris and the young lady look on. They stand together in the garden, the alliance solidified over a quiet tea set. For a brief moment, the heavy weight of noble politics lifts, replaced by the calm after a storm. At the tea party, a boy reels from the revelation that Aperudo wields healing and dark magic alongside the four elements. Beside him, the young lady's eyes sparkle with hearts. She clutches her hands together and gushes her affection with a childish declaration of love. Aperudo sips his tea, a faint blush on his cheek as he analytically notes how easily she triggers a man's protective instincts. Aperudo cuts through the chatter with a cold truth. Having many spells means nothing. When nobles fight, unique magic decides the victor. He lays out the brutal conditions. It's an ancestral gift locked behind a bloodline only usable at 15 after formal recognition. Until then, raw talent is entirely irrelevant. A boy asks if the Art family's unique magic is Arc Summon. Aperudo confirms it, explaining it calls high-ranking spirits from the Spirit King's lineage. The power is devastating enough to annihilate 40% of a subjugation party. Aperudo takes a calm sip of his tea and delivers the final, chilling point. Above all else, it doesn't betray. Aperudo casually mentions he wants to inherit Arc Summon as soon as possible, smiling as if discussing the weather. Chris goes pale, gulping down the sheer terror of that weapon. The girl beside him just sees something wonderful, completely missing the undercurrent. Aperudo is 10. He has 5 years of waiting before he can touch his family's ultimate power. 5 years pass. Aperudo, Chris, and the young lady stand in identical formal uniforms, their expressions hardened with determination. The school admission has arrived. Aperudo's thoughts are cold and precise. He confirms his preparations are flawless, ready to orchestrate the first major event of the original timeline. 15-year-old Aperudo turns to Chris with a direct command. He needs a maid for school, and he intends to select and educate a slave from Count Jose's family. Chris hesitates. He knows the Jose family trades slaves, but with a look of quiet concern, he suggests choosing someone from the Arc family instead would be quicker. Chris frowns, admitting he doesn't like the people in Aperudo's house. Aperudo's eye narrows in a sharp, knowing smirk, wondering if they've grown suspicious. He explains his cold logic. In the original story, everyone disappears. He needs a slave because they won't betray their master, and he refuses to give the protagonist any opportunities. Aperudo's strategic facade suddenly cracks. He explains his current maids, an old lady who died 3 years ago, and her 48-year-old daughter, Maito. The reality hits him with horrifying clarity. With aging staff like Maito, the Art family mansion is starting to resemble a mature maid cafe. The sheer absurdity of his domestic life sends him reeling. Chris bows, accepting the order. He asks if Aperudo has any specific request for the slave. Aperudo sets his teacup down with a soft clink. Race doesn't matter, he states flatly. The young lady gasps in surprise. Aperudo adds, calmly, but with zero room for argument, that he prefers those with self-defense abilities. The young lady eagerly volunteers herself, but Aparuto bluntly shuts her down with a cold refusal. She slumps over the table in a heap of disappointed sniffling. Chris confirms he'll arrange the slave maid as ordered and stands to leave. Aparuto's inner circle is expanding, but his boundaries remain absolute. Back at the mansion, Aparuto calls out a single name. Maito and her daughter answer in crisp unison. Aparuto stands with his back to them, his hand gripping his own arm, trembling slightly as he steels himself. He is about to deliver a decision that will upend their comfortable lives, and the maids have no idea what's coming. In the garden, the young lady's expression shifts to deep sympathy. She realizes that if the Arc family maids are afraid of him, his life at the academy will be incredibly lonely. She chides herself for not seeing it sooner, declaring she wants to offer him comfort. Aparuto remains silent, his gaze turned away as the heavy truth settles between them. Chris corners the young lady, demanding to know if her feelings are just a pretense. She smiles, a bright, calculating look in her eyes, admitting that this specific personality type is actually easier to get close to. She's reading Aparuto like a playbook. Chris glares, his suspicion hanging in the air like a blade. She might be more dangerous than she looks. The young lady plants her feet and insists it's pure love, doubling down on her genuine devotion. Chris's expression hardens with the weight of his own past failures. He confesses he once abandoned Aparuto, leaving him completely alone, yet Aparuto still saved him. He uses his own betrayal and forgiveness as proof that they both owe Absolute Sama everything. The young lady asks about the rumors of the Absolute Evil skill. She admits the story made her chest swell with resolve. If Aparuto faces loneliness again, she vows to stay by his side. She cheerfully justifies her strategy, claiming it's better to approach him openly and comically. Chris stares back in silence, completely unconvinced by her big-hearted act. Chris clenches his fist, his eyes burning with conviction. He feels the exact same way. He will never abandon Aparuto again. His mission is clear. He will fill Aparuto's surroundings with loyal allies. It is his absolute responsibility. The young lady smiles, her pact sealed in the quiet garden. Chris arrives at the imposing gates of the slave trader's mansion. A look of quiet conflict settles on his face. He knows he's about to do something deeply uncomfortable, but his vow to Absolute Sama burns hot in his chest. It's a necessary step to build that foundation of loyal allies. He takes a steadying breath and walks through the gate. A grand carriage waits on the cobblestone street. An older gentleman gives a formal send-off, telling Aparuto to take care. Aparuto, looking young in his tailored suit, lets out a quiet, relieved sigh. His mission at the mansion is complete, and his path to the academy is finally clear. The heavy iron gates of Count Jose's mansion loom before Chris. He stands facing the guards, the weight of his mission pressing down on him. With a determined stride, he passes through the entrance, his expression set as he steps into the unknown to fulfill his vow. Chris steps onto the polished floor of the grand foyer. A butler greets him, bowing low and addressing him as Absolute Sama. Chris manages a stiff nod. Deeper inside, the butler presents a selection of slaves trained in self-defense. Chris swallows hard, realizing the sheer scale of what he's agreed to oversee. The butler's tone shifts to a formal warning, informing the young master of the house rules and the strict restrictions placed on slave behavior. In the grand hall, a young lady with curly hair steps forward. She cuts through the pleasantries with startling bluntness, declaring there's no need to lower the price, as incurring debt is troublesome. Chris turns to Count Jose, his face beaming with genuine relief. He offers his sincere thanks for the Count's hard work in arranging the slave maid. Count Jose receives the gratitude with a subtle, knowing smile, his expression calm and satisfied. The dark business between them is concluded successfully. The butler calmly explains the system. The slaves are bound by a contract skill, ensuring there will be no trouble. Aparuto stands rigid, his expression sharp as he processes this cold fact of absolute control. The butler directs them toward an ornate, empty chair in the grand room, setting the stage for the selection. Aparuto sits alone in the ornate room. The selection begins now, a one-on-one interview. He internally compares the gravity of the choice to purchasing a house. This is a once-in-a-lifetime acquisition, and he cannot afford a single mistake. A soft footstep signals the first candidate's arrival. The door opens to reveal an 8-year-old girl from the wolf tribe. A tag reading her name is pinned to her ragged dress. She clasps her chained hands together, tears welling in her terrified eyes, and begs Aparuto to buy her. Aparuto rests his chin on his hand, his expression shifting to intrigued calculation as he wonders if this meeting is fate. In the mansion corridors, a young maid cheerfully asks the veteran head maid, Mito, how she's getting used to the job. Mito replies calmly. The young maid leans in, her tone shifting to curiosity, and asks the real question, how is it going with Aparuto? Mito's eyes avert slightly as she answers with a quiet, uncertain hesitation. Mito admits she initially only dreaded spending time with Aprieto. A flashback shows him standing silently, surprisingly quiet compared to the other arcs. The focus tightens on her thoughtful expression. After watching him for months, she confesses she simply doesn't know what to think anymore. Mito's internal monologue continues as she assesses her young master. She notes a strange duality in him. His speech is respectful yet invasive, and his emotionless face occasionally reveals a deeper story. He has never raised a hand against the servants, a stark contrast to the terrifying reputation that surrounds him. Mito gently holds the younger maid Maria's hands, telling her to remain exactly as she is. Maria looks up in surprise as Mito releases her and turns to walk away. Looking back over her shoulder, Mito calmly asks what the matter is, leaving Maria flustered and confused by her senior's abrupt departure. Dishes crash to the floor as Maria gasps in shock, kneeling amidst the shards. A young boy beside her asks why she dropped them. A loud impact makes him flinch, his expression hardening as he mutters about her giving off the vibe of a total jerk. Maria stares ahead with a hollow, exhausted expression, complaining that the atmosphere is driving her crazy. Months later, Mito informs a hesitant Maria that her training duties are complete. She directly entrusts Aprieto's care to the younger maid. Maria stammers in surprise. Then, with a knowing, serene smile that holds no trace of fear, Mito asks her a pointed question: isn't she afraid of their master? Maria confesses that saying she isn't afraid would be a lie. Mito understands, telling her that as Aprieto's official handmaiden, she has every right to ask about his skill, absolute evil. After a heavy silence, Mito quietly reflects on how terrible it must be to be feared solely because of a skill. Mito explains the invisible weight the household carries. The Ark servants sympathize with Aprieto and shield him, resulting in a crushing, serious atmosphere where he rarely smiles. Her hands clasp together tight with emotion. She knows the burden is enormous for a child, but she begs Maria to continue supporting him. Maria bows and approaches his door. Maria stands stiffly before Aprieto, confirming she's taken over her duties. Aprieto acknowledges her calmly, but Maria, clasping her hands in visible anxiety, brings up the real issue. Mito told her about his skill, absolute evil. Her voice trembles as she asks the loaded question, does it bother him? Aprieto's face contorts in a furious shout as he slams a hand to his chest, screaming his defiance to the world. He doesn't care if everyone hates him, but an extreme close-up of his eye reveals the cracks in that facade. His inner voice whispers a chilling truth. He fears being truly seen through, knowing it could change him. Maria's eyes widen as she realizes the sheer weight of his determination, finding it both sad and bittersweet. She knows he will probably continue to live while getting hurt. Aprieto stands by the window, holding a small booklet, looking out in silent weariness as the reality of his lonely path settles over the room. Mito wraps her arms around Aprieto from behind while he sits stiffly in a grand chair, a thick book open on his lap. Her eyes are closed in a moment of quiet support. Aprieto's eyes go wide with startled tension, his body rigid against her touch, completely unaccustomed to this uninvited comfort. Maria's scream rips through the room. She thrashes in pure terror, pinned by a brutal grip, begging to be let go. The focus cuts to Mito's eyes. She watches calmly from just beyond, whispering his title. Her gaze holds no shock, only the quiet recognition of a dark pattern she's seen before. Aprieto pins Maria from behind. She screams in terror, thrashing against his grip. He doesn't flinch, just coldly orders her to prepare his bath before snapping his fingers and walking away. Aprieto asks if he should join her. Maria shrieks her absolute refusal, but they ended up taking a bath together anyway. A shadowy figure clenches his fist, vowing to use them as weapons to crush the Art family. A carriage arrives at the estate, setting the stage for a bloody confrontation. Wool, an 8-year-old wolf tribe girl, begs to be bought with tears in her eyes. Aprieto watches her tremble, noting how much it hurts to be disliked, while Chris casually brushes off the tension. Aprieto is pleased by Wool's combat potential and her skills, mercy and beastification. Chris confirms the wolf tribe are natural warriors, making her his top recommendation despite her age, so Aprieto casually agrees to buy her. The reality crashes over Wool, shattering her brave facade into raw, anguished sobs as she claws at her own face. Aprieto feels a rare flicker of doubt, but quickly masks it. Chris seethes with suppressed fury at the broken girl, but Aprieto coldly orders him to call the next candidate. Elizabeth, a muscular 43-year-old, blows a kiss and promises to be cute if he buys her. Chris stares in stunned disbelief and immediately yells for the next one. A chained woman stands with her back turned, the heavy iron cuffs marking her status. Aprieto watches her with a calculated, bored appraisal, searching for any spark of interest. Aprieto's boredom vanishes, replaced by sharp, unmistakable interest. Maria Stella stands before him with a calm, hollow resignation that completely defies the terror of the others. Apriuto recognizes the name, realizing she's a former noble knight crushed by debt. Chris notes she has no awakened magic, but Apriuto's eyes widen in horrified realization as the pieces click into place. Apriuto remembers Maria Stella is a heroine from the tale of the Kingdom of Linana. She was destined to be bought by the protagonist and become kind, and he knows exactly what she's meant to become. A memory flashes of Maria acting warm and motherly, completely inverting the power dynamic. Apriuto stares back, flushed and embarrassed as she takes total control of the situation. Apriuto realizes he can use her to strip the protagonist of her power entirely. His expression hardens into cold resolve, locking in a manipulative course of action to twist her fate. Apriuto shuts down Chris's hope for Elizabeth, declaring they will buy Wool and Maria instead. He reaches for the contracts, claiming the 2 pieces he needs to reshape his chessboard. Apriuto signs the contract, fully embracing his role as a villain. Maria stands stoic in her chains, while Wool trembles violently, frozen in absolute terror at her new reality. Apriuto grins, announcing he is their master and ordering them to serve as maids. Wool screams in panic, recognizing the infamous arch villain name, while Maria glares with cold disgust. Maria defiantly declares she'd rather die than serve him. Apriuto sighs at her dramatics, telling her they completely misunderstand the situation they are in. Apriuto unleashes his skill, dark energy swirling like living shadows as he declares they are his slaves. The crushing weight of his absolute will forces Maria's defiant glare to crack into stunned horror. Apriuto states that's all he needs is a villain and an aristocrat. He leans in, his authority absolute, and warns them to be very careful how they speak to him. Wool and Maria kneel in forced submission, broken by his power. Apriuto smirks in satisfaction before the scene cuts to Maria standing outside a grand domed building under the stars. Mitsama tells a colleague she's used to the job, admitting it's just ordinary work. The other maid sighs and asks the loaded question, how is it really going with Apriuto? A maid confesses she initially just found Apriuto silent and lonely, unlike the other arcs, but after months of watching him, her feelings have shifted into something she can't quite define. The maid notes his unsettling contradictions, respectful but invasive, emotionless but showing flickers of real pain. Most strikingly, the fearsome villain has never once raised a hand against his servants. Mitsama gently reassures Maria to remain as she is. The moment shatters when a maid suddenly collapses among broken dishes, crying out in shock. Another maid jerks backward in pure terror as Maria glares at Apriuto. She accuses him of giving off the vibe of a total jerk, leaving Apriuto sweating and exasperated by her attitude. Months later, Mitsama formally passes the duty of caring for Apriuto to Maria. Maria hesitantly asks if Mit is afraid of their master, but the older maid just smiles with warm, knowing certainty. Mit admits she was terrified at first, but now she needs Maria to understand Apriuto's skill, absolute evil. The name hangs in the air like a death sentence, leaving Maria horrified by the invisible weight he carries. Mit explains the servants shield Apriuto out of sympathy, trapping him in an atmosphere of crushing seriousness. She begs Maria to support him, and Maria steps into his room to officially take over his care. Maria confirms she's taking over, her voice trembling as she admits Mit told her about his skill. Apriuto meets her fear with a flat, quiet question, does it bother her? Apriuto shouts his practiced defiance, claiming he doesn't care if everyone hates him. But internally, he knows the terrifying truth. Being truly seen by someone could actually change him. Maria watches him, realizing his fierce determination is both sad and bittersweet. She sees the heavy burden he carries, knowing he will continue to live while getting hurt. Maria suddenly wraps her arms around Apriuto from behind in a firm, possessive embrace. He sits rigid in his chair, eyes wide with startled alarm at the uninvited comfort. Apriuto panics, shouting at her to get away from him. Maria just holds him tighter, her dark eyes filled with silent, determined resolve as she whispers his title. Maria vows to stay by his side as a sister and heal his wounded heart. Apriuto sighs, his embarrassment breaking through his villainous mask as he quietly tells her to let go. Maria playfully asks if she should join him in the bath. Apriuto shrieks his absolute refusal, but they ended up taking a bath together anyway. A stern woman reminds Apriuto that the Arc name is essential to the kingdom. They are the ones who govern ordinary affairs and handle the unruly royal family. The world sees the Arcs as mere rulers, but they are actually unsung heroes defending the nation from the shadows. A superior slams his desk, telling Apriuto they need a countermeasure for a new threat. The superior lays out the grim reality. 300 gang members from the imperial family are causing trouble in the capital. He gives Apriuto a single chilling order, kill them all. The target is the aquamarine territory, controlled by the Noir family, the Empire's shadowy puppet masters. The Arcs and Noirs have been locked in a bitter, generations-long struggle, setting the stage for a deadly clash. Apriuto tells the maids he's leaving for a mission. Maria's shock instantly hardens into unwavering resolve as she grabs his arm, declaring they're going together. Maria and the younger maid beg to accompany him, promising not to be a burden. Apriuto wrenches free, coldly telling them he can handle it alone and might not come back tonight. The maids watch him walk out the door, their voices breaking with a final, hushed plea for his safety. Maria whispers her understanding, terrified he is walking into a one-way fight. In the Aquamarine territory, 300 Noir gang members gather, hyping themselves up to crush the Art family. Their triumphant roar dies in their throats as Apriuto drops from the night sky like a shadow. Apriuto lands and instantly unleashes a massive vortex of dark energy. The technique, Dark Hole, tears through the air, swallowing light and space as it begins devouring the mob. The Dark Hole expands into a roaring engine of annihilation, beams of concentrated dark energy piercing through the swarm. Apriuto stands at the center of the maelstrom, his cloak whipping in the violent winds of his own power. A blindfolded leader screams at its teleportation magic and orders an attack. But his command is lost as his men begin dissolving into dark smoke, vanishing into the abyss. Apriuto stands alone in the wreckage, wiping blood from his face. He questions what it means to be an unsung hero, staring at his trembling hand as the line between hero and monster blurs. Chris Jose watches from a supply camp, bitter and frustrated with the hopeless royal family. He vows to gain the power needed to withstand the violence of the rebels, while a shadowed figure observes from the dark. A Noir servant is knocked into the dirt, desperately screaming his family name to beg for mercy. A single, cold eye stares down at him from the shadows, rendering his plea completely useless. Apriuto grins like a madman, craving a worthy opponent, but tells the terrified Noir servant he has to die first. The man scrambles backward through the dirt, begging to know who he is. Apriuto's answer is a chilling whisper, "I'm evil." The servant realizes his family name means absolutely nothing. Apriuto's blood-splattered face twists into a cruel smile as the dark hole vortex tears open again, swallowing the man in the night air into absolute nothingness. Apriuto steps back into the mansion, startled to find Maria waiting in the grand hall. He tells her to go back to bed, but she gently reminds him that he is fulfilling his bloody duty for the country. Maria admits Wool told her everything, revealing she now knows the Art family's dark secret role for the kingdom. Apriuto stands frozen, the weight of his slaughter suddenly laid bare to the people he protects. Apriuto realizes Wool's detection skill is real. She sensed the danger and tried to warn them. Maria wraps her arms around his blood-stained cloak, her warm embrace a stark contrast to the carnage he just committed. Maria's voice breaks as she cries, hating that the adults of this country force her childlike master to fight their bloody wars. Apriuto can only stare in weary shock, her words hitting him harder than any blade. Maria insists he's hurt, but when he waves it off, she screams that his heart is what's broken. She tells him he's so battered and numb, he can't even feel the pain anymore. Apriuto's mind echoes the horrifying realization that he has become completely numb to his own suffering. Maria presses her tear-streaked face against his chest, choking out that if he's broken, then she's the one who's messed up. Apriuto coldly tells her to go to bed and refuses her desperate plea to sleep by his side, walking off into the darkness alone. Days later, the quiet is shattered by news of a martial arts tournament in the royal capital. Maria excitedly declares Apriuto could easily win the under-15 division, but her praise bounces off his numb reality. Then, a light-haired boy at the table casually drops a bombshell: the hero will be competing this year. Apriuto's face contorts in sharp disbelief at the mention of the hero. The scene shifts to the Grand Marais Marquis estate, where a desperate girl collapses on the cobblestones, crying out that she's finally found him. Maria greets Apriuto warmly, then abruptly shrieks at him to get out, sending doves scattering from the mansion. She instantly softens, insisting it's fine because she's like an older sister to him anyway. The morning kitchen is quiet until Maria asks if the master has retreated to his room. Wool hums happily while washing dishes, confirming he went straight back after breakfast. Wool beams with joy over the chocolate Apriuto gave her, but her smile shatters the moment Maria asks about breakfast. She bursts into tears, wailing that the master scolded her. A flashback reveals Wool used her detection magic to eavesdrop, earning the scolding because she was genuinely afraid for his life. Maria takes the blame, kneeling to tell the crying girl she wishes their master would rely on them more. Maria murmurs that even his scolding must be a form of kindness. Fired up, Wool declares she wants to get strong enough to protect him and asks Maria to watch her mock sword fight with Apriuto today. Maria smoothly steals Wool's spot in a sparring match, citing the girl's chores. She steps into the training yard, gripping her sword with fierce determination, and declares she won't lose today. Maria charges forward with a battle cry, her blades colliding with Apriyuto's in a violent spray of sparks. She presses him with surprising, relentless force, her maid uniform swirling as she fights to prove her worth. Maria launches a vicious aerial strike that drives Apriyuto back, his sword rattling under the sheer impact. She grits her teeth, realizing that despite her past as a knight in training, she is struggling to push him down. The clash pauses as Apriyuto sharply demands one more match. Before Maria can process the request, a young girl's voice rings out from below, screaming, "Sister!" Apriyuto grips his practiced sword, his voice raw with earnest determination as he pleads for another round. Maria stares at him, her eyes wide with pure shock as she whispers a breathless, "Please." The duel shatters as Maria drops a stunning confession. Her true name is Maria Stella, and she was originally born into nobility. Apriyuto freezes, his desperate plea for a match dissolving under the weight of her hidden past. A dark flashback pulls back the curtain on Maria's past, showing her watching her noble family waste away from an incurable illness. Even high-ranking recovery magic fails, leaving her horrified as her parents and brother slip toward death. Young Maria desperately threw everything at the problem, high-ranking priests, expensive potions, and borrowed fortunes. But none of it mattered. Her father and brother died anyway, leaving her with nothing but a mountain of debt. Crushed by grief and debt, Maria refuses to die and leave her creditors unpaid. She hardens her resolve to survive, ignoring a young man's concerned questions as she looks forward with cold determination. She surrenders her family's magical heirloom, the real sword Stella. But it still isn't enough to clear the debt. With her territory reclaimed by the country, the former noble is chained and sold into slavery. Back in the present, Apriyuto and Maria lock blades in a shower of sparks. Maria realizes she used to see him as just an unpleasant child, but fighting him now stirs something entirely different within her. Maria thinks about how saddening and lovable it is that he tries to hide his wounds. Their blades grind together with a metallic shriek as Apriyuto pushes forward, landing a heavy blow that forces a gasp from her lips. Maria presses the attack with a fluid, vicious strike, calling him a handful. Apriyuto parries with a grimace, his grip white-knuckled and strained, but he absolutely refuses to yield an inch. The duel ends with Maria admitting her 10th consecutive loss, praising a swordsmanship no one could beat. Apriyuto looks thoughtful and haunted, casually dropping that his father would easily surpass him because the man is a monster. Wool is left reeling in alarm at Apriyuto's words about his father. Apriyuto's mind races as he realizes his foreknowledge has a massive blind spot regarding his father's actions in the original story, forcing him to prepare for betrayal. Apriyuto snaps back to reality and asks to continue sparring, but Maria gently refuses. She points out he looks exhausted and gestures to a wicker basket, offering him a peaceful break and some snacks. Maria happily feeds him a snack, then playfully suggests he rest his head in her lap. Apriyuto completely short-circuits, sputtering a frantic refusal and nearly falling off the bench in his panic. Maria looks down at his flustered state, humming contentedly as sparkles of amusement drift around her. She thoroughly enjoys having the upper hand, her quiet affection radiating in the afternoon sun. The peaceful atmosphere cracks as Maria smiles down at him. Apriyuto's wounded pride flares, and Wool watches from the sidelines with comically horrified eyes. The intimate scene leaves the young maid utterly speechless. As Apriyuto rests his head in her lap, a chilling déjà vu hits him. This exact scene happened between the original hero and Maria in the story. Wool watches from a balcony above, the quiet tension of a rewriting script hanging in the air. Maria casually brings up the royal capital's martial arts tournament, sparking Wool's excitement. Apriyuto flatly refuses to participate, though Maria confidently assumes his victory would be inevitable anyway. A violent whoosh of air streaks past the maid's head, forcing her to dive to the floor in sheer terror. She lands hard, staring in shock at the shattered teacup scattered exactly where she was just standing. The dark energy dissipates as a sharp-featured man casually catches the deadly projectile mid-flight, his thin smile radiating unsettling power. Wool and Chris stand frozen in absolute silence, completely overwhelmed by the terrifying arrival. Apriyuto smirks and casually volunteers Wool to participate in the tournament instead. Wool freezes mid-pour, her eyes wide with dawning horror as the weight of his decision drops like a guillotine. Wool spirals into panic, stammering that she's too weak and will only bring shame to him. Apriyuto calmly sips his tea, reminding her that she was trained by him and has no reason to lose to random people. Apriyuto bribes her with the capital's finest sweets if she can beat the hero's descendant. Wool's fear instantly evaporates, replaced by a greedy, tear-streaked determination as she screams that she'll do it. Wool claps her hands, immediately demanding new weapons and cute clothes as her reward. Her expression hardens into fanatical resolve, declaring she'll show him everything and prove she's the strongest. Apriyuto issues his final, absolute command to defeat the hero's descendant and claim her desires. Wool pumps her fists, screaming with unfiltered, electrified enthusiasm that she will win, and they will celebrate. The scene shifts to the Mirai estate, where the Marquis bellows at his daughter Alicia for letting Hero Arto slack off. He lectures her on the sacred, God-given weight of the hero skill and the duty it demands. The Marquis rants about Arto's chronic laziness, but Alicia's eyes light up as she realizes the timing is perfect. The bustling, festive streets of the capital roll out, setting the stage for the tournament. The massive Colosseum looms over the capital as Arto sprints toward the entrance, finally fired up. Alicia chases after him, screaming in frustration that he never shows this kind of motivation and always gets her scolded. Arto grins with supreme confidence, declaring his only job is to fight while Alicia handles the studying. Alicia fumes internally at his foolishness, stressed by her father's order to win the tournament. Dangerous rumors buzz through the crowd about the shadowy Arc family entering the tournament. A hooded figure smiles in dark excitement at the news, while his companion sighs in distress over their underworld connections. At the registration desk, Arto is entered into the under-15 division. A staff member cheerfully announces the rules. Only pure skills are allowed, no weapons or magic, setting the stage for Wool's Apriyuto-trained ambush. Hero Arto strides into the arena and declares he will take down the Arc family. He thinks he's the protagonist of this story. He doesn't realize the real monster is already watching him from the shadows. Apriyuto sits in a quiet room. A girl from the Cruel family leans in with an unsettling smile, offering him water she prepared herself. He takes it, his expression hardening. This family rules the heavens, but her behavior is dangerously obscene. Apriyuto takes a sip of the room temperature water. He turns away from her radiant smile and flatly admits it tastes good. Her cheerful mask slips into something far more observant. The cruel girl stands flushed and stunned by his casual admission. She turns to Chris, offering the same water and whispering that her water magic just tastes better. Chris freezes in horror. Another boy hisses at him to shut up before he voices the disturbing implication of what prepared really means. The arena erupts. Wool strides into the sunlight wearing a sleek black combat suit, metal plates glinting over her knuckles. The crowd whispers in confusion about her lack of weapons. She ignores them, ears perked, ready to tear into the first opponent. Apriyuto watches from the stands, calmly explaining Wool's strategy. Her overwhelming speed makes long weapons useless, so they designed equipment to inflict maximum damage with a single punch. The cruel girl claps in delight, but Chris frets that a child might lack a decisive finishing move. Apriyuto banned Wool's Beastman transformation to hide her trump card. Down in the arena, Alicia smiles confidently, while Hero Arto draws his sword, fiercely claiming he trained her too. Wool stands alone in the vast Colosseum, her mind locked on a single, brutal promise: she will beat them all. Wool locks eyes with Hero Arto. He swings his sword, but she darts aside in a blur, leaving him striking empty air. The arena falls dead silent for a heartbeat, before a voice from the stands screams in shock at her speed. Onlookers stare in disbelief as Wool's opponent swings wildly at nothing. She doesn't even look at him. A spectral wolf materializes behind her as she drops low, darting under his clumsy slash and leaving him stabbing at dust. The crowd watches in stunned silence as Wool moves with blinding animalistic instinct. She closes the distance and lands a thunderous punch that cracks the ground beneath her opponent. As she stands over the defeated fighter, a voice from the stands admires the terrifying beauty of the Beastmen. Chris stares down from the stands, sweating as he whispers that it's a complete victory. Wool kneels on the arena floor, head bowed, while Chris admits he never expected Apriyuto to plan that far ahead. Apriyuto watches silently, giving the credit where it's due. Wool was the one who fought. The next match is announced. Apriyuto leans forward, a cool, analytical smile touching his lips as he reviews his opponent's file. The hero possesses a legendary skill and defeated a higher-ranked being in the original story. Apriyuto murmurs that it's time to see what he's really got. A cool blonde with a sword taunts a bristling wolf-eared fighter, telling him he's unlucky. The wolf-eared youth snarls in furious defiance and charges. Their blades clash in a shower of sparks, kicking off a brutal opening exchange. From the stands, Chris confirms the struggling blonde is indeed the hero. Apriyuto watches in silence, entirely unimpressed. The hero isn't using his skill meaningfully, just relying on brute force. Apriyuto's verdict is cold. His combat sense is worse than Wool's. The crowd watches the hero secure an abrupt, anticlimactic victory. Arto strikes a triumphant pose, shouting that he's a hero and should handle the dirty work. The Colosseum looms over the capital, leaving a single echoing question in the air. What is this country thinking? The finals of the under-15 division begin. Hero Arto walks toward the arena, reflecting on his path to the top. None of his opponents were a match for him, but his final challenger is from the Arc family. He tells his sister to watch closely. A blinding flash of white light erupts from the Grand Gate. A lone figure strides into the sunlight, booming that he will return as a decorated hero. Wool watches with cold, predatory focus while Arto smiles with pure, unshaken self-assurance. The final match is declared: Arto versus Wool. The command rings out to begin. Arto draws his sword with a confident smirk, while Wool crouches low, coiled to explode. The tension snaps as the two fighters lunge at each other. A voice calls out, asking if she's from the Arc family. Wool halts, her back turned. She slowly turns around, her face completely blank, and whispers that this is for her master. Then, a wide, toothy grin splits her face as she eagerly promises to kill him. Arto looks down at her, confused and alarmed by the fierce, predatory look in the young girl's eyes. He demands to know what horrible training the Arc family subjected her to. Wool ignores his question, simply stating that if she wins, she gets a delicious meal, before launching herself at him in a blur of violence. Wool explodes into motion, screaming that she doesn't have time for this. Arto is caught completely off guard, his mind racing to a single, bewildered conclusion as he takes in her terrifying intensity. She must not be fed enough. Arto stumbles backward, desperately parrying as Wool's relentless assault pushes him to the brink. He snarls his hatred for the Arc family, but her speed is overwhelming. He realizes with sinking dread that he can barely keep up. Wool's blade clashes against his, forcing him back with a deafening ring. She looms overhead, her wolf eyes cold and lethal. Arto's face twists in shock and fury, screaming at her not to underestimate him, entirely unable to comprehend how a small girl is overpowering the hero. Arto panics, looking up at the sky as Wool completely vanishes from his sight. The arena floor is empty. From the stands, Alicia leaps to her feet, her voice cutting through the noise with a desperate, terrified warning. She's below him. Wool's blade slams down with a sharp rush of air. Arto's face contorts in sheer panic as sweat flies from his brow. Alicia screams his name in raw terror. Down in the VIP box, Apriyuto watches with a faint, knowing smirk, already calculating the outcome. Arto crashes hard into the arena floor, shattering the tiles around him. The crowd recoils in horror. Arto lies dazed, scraping across the ground while Alicia screams in utter devastation. Wool stands perfectly still, her predatory focus replaced by a cold, satisfied calm. The arena echoes with a thunderous roar. Wool stands victorious, a wide, triumphant grin spreading across her face. In the stands, Alicia slumps in defeated resignation. Wool clasps her hands together, her eyes sparkling with innocent delight as she cheers for the sweets of victory. The Colosseum erupts as the reality of the fight sinks in. Apriyuto watches with calm, analytical eyes, entirely unsurprised. Wool beams with childlike joy over her promised reward, while the hero lies broken on the shattered tiles. Alicia watches in devastated silence as the symbol of hope is brutally dismantled. The mood in the VIP box is stunned. Apriyuto cuts through the relief with cold analysis. The hero's skills were troublesome, but the wielder was too weak to use them. If the hero had landed even a single hit, they would have lost. Wool walks alone, the razor-thin margin of their triumph hanging in the air. Apriyuto leans forward with a sharp smile, laying out the cold truth. At this stage, Wool is simply stronger. He warns that if their levels were any closer, they could have lost, his gaze hardening as he concludes they need to keep a close eye on the hero from now on. Wool bursts through the doorway, shouting that she's back. All her predatory coldness is gone, replaced by pure, unfiltered joy as she demands sweets and shopping. Apriyuto watches her approach, a faint smile touching his lips as he raises a hand to steady himself against her tidal wave of enthusiasm. Apriyuto gently pats her head, his voice warm with genuine approval as he promises a proper reward. Wool's eyes sparkle with innocent delight. The two of them walk through the town streets under a bright sky, Apriyuto telling her not to hold back, and Wool cheerfully agreeing. Alicia sits on the edge of a bed in a stone-walled room, staring at the unconscious figure beside her. Hero Arto's face is slack, marked by the brutal toll of the battle. She whispers in hollow disbelief that even the hero lost. Alicia sits vigil, hoping this crushing defeat teaches her brother something. She flashes back to her own frustration as the responsible one, always cleaning up his messes while their father deflects the blame. Arto finally stirs, groggily murmuring her name, and she leans over him in relief. Arto stares at the ceiling, his face hollow as he admits his loss. Alicia asks quietly if he gained anything from the experience. With grim finality, Arto clenches his fist under the blanket and declares that he has made a decision. Alicia clasps her hands, tears of joy welling in her eyes as she beams with relief, believing he finally understands his duty. But Arto's face fills the frame with a cold, hard intensity. He declares flatly that he is going to crush the Arc family. Alicia freezes, the joy draining from her face as she realizes he didn't learn humility, he just found a new target. Arto seethes that the rumors are true, his face twisted with fury as flashbacks of Wool's terrifying grace slice through his mind. Alicia stares at him, utterly stricken, and throws her hands up in panic. She begs him to understand that even as a hero, it's reckless for a commoner to crush a high-ranking noble. Alicia leans in, desperately warning him that messing with the Arc family will destroy their own Mirai family. Arto just turns to her with a sunshine-bright grin, suggesting they bring down the Arc family together. Beneath the cheerful exterior, his eyes are cold and calculating. He admits he can't do it alone, telling her she's with him now. Alicia's composure finally snaps. She screams at him not to joke around, standing over him with her hands on her hips. She lays down her harsh terms. He must provide a solid reason to convince the royal family and gather a large army. Only then will she support him. Alicia's composure breaks completely, tears streaming down her face as she screams at him to stop messing with the Arc family until then. Arto listens with a thoughtful, detached look, processing her conditions with chilling clarity. He agrees simply, leaving Alicia staring up at him, realizing her triumphant ultimatum just handed him the key to a trap. Arto stands tall, his face split with a blinding hero grin as he announces he'll do it. But Alicia's eyes are wide with pure disbelief. The room seems to crack apart around her, lightning erupting across the darkness as she screams in absolute dread, realizing the catastrophic path he just committed them to. A summons arrives from the royal castle. Prince Michael wants Apriuto to bring Wool for a viewing. Apriuto sits back, recognizing the arrogant brat from the party. His mind races with a chilling realization. In the original story, this Michael provided the military support to the hero. Apriuto delivers the news to Wool and the maid. Wool immediately panics, clutching her face in terror and asking if he's going to be killed. Apriuto cuts in calmly, assuring her she won't be, speculating the prince just liked her tournament performance. Wool looks down, her voice small and sad. Wool is frozen in tears, clutching her chest and asking if she's being abandoned. Her maid steps forward, promising to protect her with all her might. Apriuto stands tall before the trembling girl, his voice steady and absolute as he promises he won't let her go. Apriuto delivers a quiet, absolute statement: she belongs to him. Wool stares at him, the shock melting into a tearful, fierce resolve. She echoes his declaration back to him, reaffirming their unbreakable bond in the face of the prince's demand. Prince Michael sits casually on a sofa, offering a charming, predatory smile and a casual well done. From the shadows, a tense voice recognizes the dangerous political player who has just taken direct interest. Apriuto's eye narrows, his friendly facade gone as he dissects the deadly game entering their lives. Apriuto leans back on the plush sofa, his gaze cutting sharply across the room as he questions the massive number of guards standing watch. The opulent hall is lined with soldiers, their presence feeling less like protection and more like a cage. Wool sits beside him in silent fear. Prince Michael leans back with a dangerous smile, claiming the guards are there because a disaster would be unacceptable for the next king. Wool growls, a dark aura crackling around her until her maid restrains her. Apriuto calmly agrees, his eyes sharp as a guard steps forward to ask their business, the cage of steel tightening around them. Prince Michael leans forward, his tone turning sharp and imperious as he demands Apriuto hand over his slave. A blade cleaves its sheath with a sharp ring. Apriuto's expression hardens into cold defiance as he draws his sword, meets the prince's gaze, and flatly refuses. He lowers the blade and turns to leave, shattering the fragile piece. The click of multiple swords being drawn fills the hall. Wool shouts in outrage as the guards aim their weapons. Michael coldly orders them to sheathe their swords, but one guard steps forward. Wool snaps, a dark aura erupting as she screams at the prince. Through the chaos, Apriuto simply watches, a dark shadow falling over his eyes as a quiet, chilling laugh escapes his lips. He finds the escalation amusing. Prince Michael laughs, mocking the Arc family's foolishness against his army of guards. Apriuto's amusement vanishes, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper that a fool needs a lesson. Wool bares her teeth in a feral snarl, but Michael just leans in with a sickening smile, offering to spare her life if she becomes his. A maid desperately clamps onto Wool's arm to drag her back, but the slave wrenches free with a guttural cry. She screams that she belongs to her master and he will never lose to trash like them. Prince Michael's face twists into a mask of trembling, unhinged rage, shrieking at them to get lost and die. Exasperated, the crown prince mutters that both master and slave are begging for death. He coldly declares that drawing steel on the royal family seals their death warrant, ordering his soldiers to execute them. The guards roar their obedience, swords hissing from their sheaths as they surge forward to slaughter the Arc heir. A sharp scream shatters the chaos as an attendant freezes in shock. Apriuto's voice cuts through the noise, absolute and clear, ordering Wool to run and spread the word that the crown prince has gone mad. She snaps to attention, fear replaced by fierce loyalty, and bolts from the room to raise the alarm. Apriuto vanishes into a dark blur of liquid speed. A guard's head snaps back violently from an unseen impact, while Wool slashes downward with explosive force. Apriuto's eye locks onto his targets, cold and unwavering, as the room plunges into a deep, consuming darkness. A severed hand lands in a pool of black blood. 3 guards stand frozen for a split second before their bodies cleave horizontally, collapsing in a gruesome line. Apriuto stands amidst the carnage, his blade dripping, and quietly reminds them that he gave a warning. Apriuto delivers a final, chilling warning that there won't be a second time. The crown prince completely shatters, flinching back on his sofa with a terrified, pleading stammer. Apriuto doesn't even look back, simply turning his heel and walking toward the exit, leaving a severed hand in a pool of dark blood behind him. Desperate to rally, Michael barks that the Arc heir wouldn't dare kill a high-ranking noble just for a slave. Apriuto's foot hits the floor with deliberate weight. He pauses, turning his head just enough to fix the prince with a glacial stare, flatly stating he can't hear him over the sound of his shattered authority. The prince's composure evaporates entirely. He erupts in pure, unrestrained hatred, screaming that Apriuto's very existence is an eyesore. Apriuto remains utterly unfazed, lightly touching his face with a chillingly calm gaze before delivering a simple, detached acknowledgement. Apriuto shoves a hand toward the terrified prince, declaring that an assassination attempt has consequences. He asks if the prince understands what happens next. A dark, swirling energy erupts around him, manifesting the overwhelming force of a skill called King's Dominion. Apriuto walks toward the door, ignoring the prince's unhinged, tearful screaming about how offensive his existence is. Wool struggles violently against her maid, desperate to protect her master. Suddenly, the doors burst open as a high-ranking guard commander strides in, ordering both sides to drop their weapons before the room drowns in blood. In a grand chamber, a woman cheerfully greets the king, but the monarch is far from amused. His face is a mask of shock and fury as he booms that the situation is terrible. The unexpected arrival of the king himself throws all of Apriuto's calculated plans into sudden, chaotic question. The timeline snaps back to the immediate aftermath of the failed execution. Prince Michael spins a twisted narrative claiming the Arc heirs drew first blood while his royal guards ended up dead. His composure completely fractures, screaming his final, desperate command for the remaining soldiers to kill them all. A hand holds out a small device, projecting a holographic recording of the chaotic fight. The mustached king stares at the projection in stunned disbelief, watching Apriuto stand amidst the defeated royal guards. His voice is tight with shock as he demands to know what this footage is. Apriuto holds up the ornate device, casually explaining he recorded everything with a magic tool just in case. The king's vein throbs at his temple as he processes the undeniable evidence. Apriuto stands with effortless poise, hands clasped behind his back, watching the monarch's reaction with quiet, unshakable confidence. Apriuto offers a stiff, formal apology, but the king's cold fury rejects it. He reminds the Arc heir that his family are the royal enforcers, expected to get their hands dirty for the crown. Apriuto fires back a dangerous question. If the execution was a direct royal order, the Arc family will reconsider its position, leaving the king visibly sweating. The king stands rigid, suffocating under the pressure of the magic footage and Apriuto's ultimatum. A subtle smirk plays on Apriuto's lips as he watches the monarch squirm. Finally, the king breaks, his mustache trembling as he admits aloud that it was just Michael's rampage, confessing this escalation was never part of the plan. Trying to salvage his dignity, the king weakly protests that severing a guard's arm was excessive. Apriuto counters with ice-cold logic. Attacking a high-ranking noble requires self-defense, and the royal guard failed in their duty to correct the prince's mistake. He flatly dismisses the blame, turning away with a chilling question of what the crown will do next. Apriuto presses the king for accountability, listing the false summons, the attempted seizure of his slave, and the murder attempt. The sweating monarch offers a shaky deal, compensation for Apriuto and Wool, plus house arrest for the prince. Apriuto's fist vibrates with contained force as he throws the insulting offer right back at the throne. Apriuto drops the demand that will break the monarchy, strip Prince Michael of his position as heir. The king staggers back, pleading that Michael is his only son. Apriuto notes that without an heir, the royal line ends, but gently points out the king has another option, leaving a radical implication hanging in the air. Apriuto lays out the perfect solution: have Princess Haniel marry and take the throne instead of the disgraced Michael. The trapped king concedes that his daughter is far more capable, but reveals a fatal flaw. A stunning image of the blindfolded princess appears as the king admits she cannot handle official duties in her blind state. Apriuto coldly tells Wool that the princess's blindness is the monarch's problem to solve. His own demands remain non-negotiable: full compensation and the immediate stripping of Michael's crown prince title. The king's mustache trembles, sweat beading on his face as the crushing weight of the ultimatum forces his hand. Inside a grand, sun-drenched greenhouse, a solitary girl with long dark hair sits alone at a tea set for one. The luxurious space feels entirely isolating. A tight close-up reveals her face twisted in pure, overwhelming distress, silent tears of panic spilling as the emotional weight crushes her. Wool hesitates before a lavish strawberry tart, but Apriuto assures her it's part of the king's compensation and tells her to eat. Standing alone, her voice turns small as she asks why he protected her, terrified that making an enemy of the prince will cause massive problems. Apriuto doesn't immediately answer, leaving her question hanging in the quiet room. Wool's voice trembles as she voices her deepest fear. Making an enemy of the prince is like making an enemy of the entire kingdom. Apriuto's gaze turns to cold steel, cutting her off. He reminds her that the royal family tried to steal her from the loyal Ark family first, flatly declaring her panic to be nonsense. Apriuto explains that their territory was ruled by the Ark family long before the kingdom was even founded. All the land belongs to them, meaning a single slave has no reason to be handed over to outsiders. He assures her it is his duty to protect his own, adding with a chilling smile that the Ark family has enemies everywhere anyway. Apriuto gives a knowing smirk, dismissing the royal threat as nothing new. Wool stares back in wide shock at his calm demeanor. The scene dissolves into a moonlit memory, where a harsh voice echoes a painful truth from his past, telling him he was discarded simply because he was weak. Wool's past crashes over her as her wolf tribe relatives snarl in disgust, declaring strength their only pride. She was always the weak one, chained and sold off as a discarded thing. The memory bleeds into the present, where Apriuto kneels before her in the wreckage of a shattered teacup, offering a hand that contrasts a lifetime of abandonment. Wool's mind races through everything her master has given her: a home, food, the power to fight, and a warmth she never knew. Looking at him, her eyes harden with fierce, absolute resolve. She makes a solemn vow that she would gladly die for him if it meant keeping him safe. Apriuto's response cuts straight to the heart of her vow. He is not so weak that he needs to sacrifice his people. Wool's face breaks into a radiant, tear-bright smile, overwhelmed that someone finally chose to protect her. The heavy moment softens as Apriuto calmly sips his tea and tells her to eat, prompting an enthusiastic, tearful agreement. Inside the monumental hall of the royal palace, the king sits slumped on his throne, visibly crushed by the weight of Apriuto's ultimatum. Below the dais, Apriuto and Wool stand together, their small forms dwarfed by the cavernous space, yet they utterly command the heavy, defeated silence of the room. Back in the throne room, the king looks down at his son with cold disappointment, asking if he understands what he has done. Kneeling on the floor, Prince Michael refuses to bow his head. Instead, he lifts it in sheer defiance, insisting that Apriuto was in the wrong and attacked first. A crystal projects the damning magical footage right in front of him. Michael goes pale, stammering in disbelief at how such a recording exists. The verdict drops directly on him. Apriuto provided the proof, and he has done something irreversible. Michael completely unravels, throwing a petulant tantrum and blaming Apriuto for ruining his 10th birthday party. Michael screams that he just wanted to teach the Ark-era lesson. The king cuts him off with a cold dismissal, stating the Duke's faction caused the initial issue, not the Ark family. Michael shrieks that he won't accept it, but the king delivers his final, icy judgment. Michael committed a crime, and the Ark family is the victim. The king's voice drops, cold and absolute, declaring that Michael will step down as crown prince. Michael's face twists in pure, horrified disbelief. His father adds that this crime would normally mean imprisonment, so he should be grateful, as guards drag the screaming, protesting prince away down the grand hall. The king sweats, realizing that disinheriting his son could be the end of the royal family. He lays out a humiliating condition. If Michael publicly shows the evidence and apologizes to Apriuto, they might consider reinstating him. Michael sags in defeat, muttering an excuse to leave, but the king roars at him to reflect on his actions, dropping his name like a final verdict. The throne room stands silent and empty, a monument to a ruined legacy. The king buries his face in his hands, lamenting that he hoped his son would mature, not act with such recklessness. Below, his advisors scramble in desperation, realizing the new crisis Apriuto forced upon them. They now have to make the blind Princess Haniel the crown princess. The king's mind races through the political wreckage, and a dangerous idea takes shape. He murmurs to his stunned advisor about engaging Princess Haniel to the Arc family, weighing the risk of opposing Duke Zen against the greater threat of Apriyuto. As he asks if they should proceed, his advisor shouts a desperate plea to wait, but the king's gaze is already fixed on the path forward. 5 years later, the courtyard of the Grand Arc family mansion echoes with the clash of steel. Maria Stella, now 20 and sharp in her uniform, sheathes her sword with a weary sigh. She admits she hasn't been able to keep up lately, slumping forward in utter defeat. Maria rests her face in her hands, blushing as she admits it's frustrating how much wider the gap between her and Apriyuto has grown. Her love-struck haze is shattered when 13-year-old Wool bounces into the courtyard, sword drawn and grinning. The young maid charges past her, begging Apriyuto to spar with her next with explosive enthusiasm. In the private bath of the mansion, Apriyuto soaks alone and firmly rejects an offer before it's even made. Wool, wrapped in a towel, stands determinedly and insists on washing his back. Apriyuto reminds her he always bathes alone, but she cuts through his old rule with a new, unshakable declaration that she has decided to be the one to do it. A soft voice murmurs that it's okay to be a little naughty, but Apriyuto immediately shuts it down as lewd. The maid insists tomorrow is an important day, so she wants to take extra care of him, repeating her decision to wash his back. A violent memory surfaces, a younger Apriyuto screaming at someone to stop clinging to him, while a gentle voice promises to take care of everything. The Arc family's ultimate power, spirit summoning, is revealed to be a brutal legacy. To pass it down, the current owner must be killed and the spirit crest stolen from their body. Apriyuto is told to prepare himself for the inheritance duel, but he snaps back defiantly that he has no intention of being killed without a fight. Apriyuto locks eyes with his father, declaring he is prepared. His mind races, realizing Viren never appeared in the original story because he was already dead, killed during this exact inheritance duel. They face each other across the vast hall, swords drawn, as Viren casually notes it has been a long time since they last sparred. Apriyuto's eyes burn with the cold certainty of a son ready to kill his father, mirroring the iron-hard intensity of Viren's stance. The air crackles as Apriyuto erupts forward. His sword screams through the air in a devastating slash, tearing through a cascade of dark debris and shattered energy in a blur of violence. Apriyuto's blade connects with a guttural shout, unleashing his full power and warping the world before him. A terrifying vortex of pure darkness erupts from his sword, a churning dark hole that devours light and reality itself. Viren is caught within its pull, his silhouette distorted as debris and shattered ground are sucked into the abyss. The dark hole doesn't just attack, it consumes. Black, thorn-like energy rips through the space, swelling into a churning abyss that swallows sound and the very ground. Viren is engulfed by the all-devouring energy, unmade by his own son's power, leaving Apriyuto standing in a silent, empty void. The duel explodes into its next phase as Apriyuto unleashes a devastating follow-up. He channels ferocious energy into his blade, executing a black flame slash that manifests as a swirling vortex of dark, flame-like power. The attack tears forward with horrifying speed, a visible wave of destruction aimed directly at his father. Apriyuto's eyes widen in shock as he processes a staggering realization. His own power level now exceeds 90. His mind races, connecting the dots that the average soldier is level 20, and the original story only featured characters above 50. His current strength has shattered that known ceiling entirely, operating in a realm of power he never knew existed. Viren stands poised after the devastating assault, calmly acknowledging that his son is incredibly strong. But his expression hardens with cold certainty, stating that the true difference between them is the number of life-or-death situations they have survived. With a sudden burst of terrifying speed, Viren explodes forward, declaring it is his turn to attack as Apriyuto braces for the impact. Viren's charge connects. Apriyuto crosses his sword just in time, skidding backward as the sheer force threatens to snap his arms. Viren stands over him, smirking. "You managed to block that." Apriyuto drops to one knee, gasping. The experience gap isn't just a difference in skill, it's a chasm. Apriyuto catches his breath and mutters, "Well then." He explodes forward, his blade carving a devastating arc that shatters the floor in a burst of raw energy. He pulls back instantly, eyes locked on his father. Viren closes the distance in a blur. Apriyuto roars, unleashing a massive sphere of swirling dark energy. How about this? The attack collides with his father's guard, a thunderous impact that cracks the very air between them. The blast splinters a stone wall, but Viren walks through the debris completely unfazed. He's been the kingdom's hidden protector for years, and Apriyuto finally realizes his father is operating on a completely different level. Viren's dark aura swells. "As expected of you, Apriyuto," he roars, gathering more power. Apriyuto wipes the sweat from his face. "It's time to get serious." Apariuto's eyes widen as his own power level shatters every known limit. The realization is cut short when an unseen force slams into his chest. He's launched backward through the air, a pained groan escaping his lips as his father's counterattack overwhelms him. Apariuto crashes into the far wall, pinning him with crushing, invisible pressure. Veins bulge on his face as he desperately pushes back against his father's blade. He's driven to his knees. Viren stands over him, calm and utterly dominant. The gap between them is built on years of bloody survival. The floor explodes into a massive crater. Apariuto kneels in the rubble, blood streaking down his temple, teeth gritted against the overwhelming weight. Viren looks down with chilling, paternal patience. Apariuto's newfound power level means absolutely nothing here. The dust settles in the ruined hall. Viren stands barely winded, a proud smile on his face. "You've grown strong, Apariuto." Apariuto remains on his knees, sword loose, staring at the unbridgeable chasm of his father's experience. Total defeat. Viren points his sword, declaring this the final blow. "Surpass me." Apariuto raises a hand, blood on his face, and unleashes his ultimate trump card. Spirit summoning. The ground splinters beneath him as he roars for the spirit of creation to emerge. A soft, otherworldly glow fills the hall. From the light, a towering armored maiden materializes. Her eyes burn with an intense, serene power as she floats above the shattered floor, the ultimate trump card. Apariuto extends his hand, dark energy coiling around his fingers. Dark hole. Reality tears apart. A swirling vortex of absolute darkness erupts, devouring light, stone, and air. The howling abyss expands, a wound in the world that refuses to close. The killing intent fades. Apariuto and Viren sit in surviving armchairs amidst the wreckage. Viren breaks the silence. Why did Apariuto save his life? He couldn't inherit the unique magic unless Viren died. Apariuto's voice is firm. Sacrificing his father's life for a spell is too cruel. Apariuto refuses power bought with blood. Viren smiles faintly, knowing the original Apariuto would have accepted the trade. But Viren points out the brutal truth. A spirit contract requires the previous holder's death. Apariuto meets his gaze. He's already thought of a way around it. Apariuto proposes a contract with the summoned spirit of creation instead. He'll inherit the unique magic naturally when Viren dies of old age. No murder, just patience. Viren notes that contracting a high-ranking spirit demands enormous magical power but looks at his battered son. You should be capable of it. Viren smiles. Let the loser obey the winner. He confirms the plan and reveals he can summon 3 spirits under the Spirit King's direct control. Apariuto answers with a firm, unwavering yes. Viren explains the entity isn't the spirit of creation, but the spirit of devotion, a high-ranking support spirit that enhances the body and expands range. Apariuto asks for its name. Viren delivers the cold truth. Spirits understand humans but cannot speak in the mortal world. Viren names the spirit Toa. It glows in response. Apariuto tests the bond, asking her to shrink. The towering maiden condenses into a tiny, floating figure hovering near his shoulder. The contract is sealed. Viren acknowledges his son's success. In 3 years upon graduating the academy, Apariuto will formally become head of the Arc family. Apariuto accepts the responsibility with a confident smile, Toa floating faithfully beside him. The Lanana Kingdom's royal castle. 2 men shake hands. One smiles with genuine relief. To think we'd meet again alive. Apariuto's tone is dry. I just failed to die. Apariuto speaks with his childhood friend, the king. The king tells him not to speak so grimly. Apariuto replies that a man who killed many, even his own father, never expected to survive. The king thanks him for the Arc family's years of service. Apariuto smiles, genuinely glad his friend is alive. The king sighs, wishing Prince Michael and Viren could have gotten along with Apariuto. Then he drops a political bomb. He asks Apariuto directly if he's considered an engagement with his daughter, Princess Haniel. Apariuto bursts into loud, unrestrained laughter. The king sweats, admitting he originally planned to leave the throne to Apariuto after his own death, but forgot because he fully intended to die soon. The king looks at Apariuto, seeing the exhaustion of a man tired of doing the royal family's dirty work. The king realizes that once Apariuto becomes head of the Arc family, he'll have no reason to serve the crown. Apariuto delivers the verdict. If the royal family can't offer a reward worth his loyalty, the arrangement dies. The Arc family's behind-the-scenes work ends with him. A carriage rolls through the capital streets, stopping at the imposing Lanana Royal Academy. The coachman opens the door. From inside, Apariuto's weary voice cuts through the air. Of course! He steps out, heading to his next battlefield. Apariuto strides through the academy gates, leading a group of fellow students. A curly-haired girl walks beside him, smiling sweetly as they step into their new environment. The entrance exam is blatantly rigged. An instructor announces the test will sort students into classes A through D, but drops the real rule: subordinates have been ordered not to score low, so no one holds back Lord Aperyuto. The instructor announces the year's biggest news: Prince Michael and the Saint are enrolling. He warns everyone not to tarnish Lord Aperyuto's name. Aperyuto shouts a sharp, determined, "Yes!" Saint Elizabeth descends the grand staircase in a nun's habit, radiating calm authority. Aperyuto's companion whispers that she has a mysterious aura. Aperyuto just stares, his gaze sharp and analytical. Aperyuto recognizes her immediately. Elizabeth the Saintess. He remembers her kneeling on battlefields, using regeneration to heal fatal wounds just to send Hero Arto back to the front lines, while her incitement skill kept the army's morale blazing. She isn't just a saint, she's a dual-edged weapon. Aperyuto calculates that she's a danger on par with the hero himself. His companion notes she's been sheltered by the church and is likely naive. Then, Lady Alicia walks into view, alone. Aperyuto's eyes narrow. He needs to act before she falls completely under the hero's influence. Aperyuto's companion explains that Hero Arto is exempt from the exam, entering via royal recommendation. Down in the crowd, Alicia walks with a strained smile. A bystander watches her, knowing her status as the hero's fiancé will make her a target inside these walls. The instructor announces the next phase: one-on-one mock battles to evaluate combat and magic. Examinees are told to wait for their names. Alicia smiles innocently, unaware of the eyes on her. Suddenly, St. Elizabeth's voice cuts through the courtyard like a blade. She descends from above in a whirlwind of dark fabric, her boots hitting the ground with a decisive, echoing impact. The mock battles begin. A dark-haired examinee is forced back by a barrage of crystalline spikes erupting from the ground, controlled by a curly-haired girl. Aperyuto's companion watches in shock. Aperyuto just observes with cold, calculating calm. A boot steps firmly onto the arena floor. The dark-haired boy slashes wildly, but the girl holds her palm steady, her crystal spikes penning him in place. Aperyuto's companion realizes she's become incredibly strong after receiving magic instruction from Aperyuto. Aperyuto smiles faintly. Indeed, a natural result. The examiner calls the match. Lady Cruel was declared the winner. She marches back to the stands, beaming. Lord Aperyuto, I have returned. Aperyuto nods. You become strong, Lady Cruel. Her face flushes with pure joy, completely flustered by the praise. Lady Cruel melts into a blushing mess, telling him to do his best too. Aperyuto gives a simple, of course. He turns to his companion. Good work. Oh, Chris, you were here too. Chris's expression tightens at being treated as an afterthought. The crowd buzzes, speculating who will face Aperyuto next. Duke Noir? Lady Alicia? Or the Saintess herself? The idea of facing Elizabeth sends a shockwave through the stands. The announcer calls his name. Next, Aperyuto Arc. Lady Cruel cheers for him, but Aperyuto ignores the noise, stepping onto the stage alone. In the stands, examinees whisper nervously about the Noir family, remembering the trouble they caused at Prince Michael's party. Tristan Noir steps onto the stage. Rumored to surpass his entire family, he's the ultimate wildcard. As his boot hits the floor, Aperyuto's composure cracks. His eyes narrow in sheer disbelief. What? The arena falls dead silent. Aperyuto expected one opponent. Instead, two figures stand across from him. Alicia Marai, the hero's fiancée, and Saintess Elizabeth, hands clasped in sharp purpose. The crowd erupts. This isn't a mock battle, it's a political detonation. Tristan Noir steps forward with a composed smile, bowing politely to all three. I am Tristan Noir. His eyes sharpen, the playful facade dropping. He turns to the examiner. Could you please explain this situation? The examiner stammers through the stunned silence. The mock battles were meant to be one-on-one, but the Saintess's support abilities require special evaluation. As a result, this match will be a 2-on-2 battle. The examiner announces the pairs. Aperyuto Arc and Alicia Marai versus Tristan Noir and the Saintess. Alicia's eyes go wide with panic. Tristan smiles, perfectly at ease. Aperyuto's expression shifts into a predatory grin. I'm paired with Alicia. That's helpful. Alicia breaks the silence, introducing herself nervously. Aperyuto gives a curt reply. She asks about their roles, explaining she can only use magic from a distance. Aperyuto absorbs the information with a calm, unreadable nod. Aperyuto immediately takes command. He orders Alicia to attack Tristan from a distance until he closes the gap. Alicia tries to suggest supporting him instead, but Aperyuto shuts her down coldly. Across the arena, the Saintess watches in serene silence. Aperyuto rejects her idea of overwhelming Tristan with numbers. He prefers to divide roles and fight one-on-one. Alicia's eyes widen as she realizes he intends to face Tristan completely alone. She bows her head, apologizing for misunderstanding. Alicia forces a smile, agreeing to follow his lead. Aperyuto doesn't even look back. Don't aim at the Saintess, okay? Alicia nods nervously. The examiner raises his hand. Let's begin! The battle erupts. Apreuto is a dark streak crossing the arena, sword drawn. Simultaneously, Alicia plants her feet and hurls a swirling orb of intense fire. Fireball! The projectile streaks toward Tristan while the Saintess watches calmly from behind him. Tristan doesn't flinch, he turns his head slightly. Saintess, please. Elizabeth closes her hands. Yes, divine light explodes from her form. Defense increase, automatic healing magic. The air shimmers as she layers powerful support spells directly onto Tristan, turning him into an unbreakable fortress. Alicia's fireball detonates against Tristan Noir only to pass clean through his chest. She cheers the hit, but Apreuto's flat rejection cuts through her excitement. The Saintess didn't just heal him, she built a perfect decoy, and Alicia just wasted her mana on thin air. Apreuto doesn't flinch as invisible impacts slam into his body. He barrels straight through the Saintess's divine barrage, his eyes locked on Tristan. Alicia can only watch in stunned horror as he walks through a wall of magic. Tristan spreads his arms, grinning like a kid on holiday. He's been dying to test the absolute and see if the hype is real. Apreuto just draws his sword in silence, letting the crowd's murmurs fill the space between them. Tristan's smile stretches into something unhinged, his eyes half-lidded with pure, predatory delight. He's been waiting for this exact moment. This isn't just a mock battle to him, it's the main event. Tristan screams his challenge, raising his blade to carve Apreuto to pieces. Apreuto doesn't even blink, muttering that he talks too much. Their steel collides with a shockwave that rattles the entire arena. Alicia grips the railing, her face drained of color as the two clash. Tristan laughs through the grinding steel, taunting Apreuto, while the Saintess quietly weaves her magic into every swing. He shifts his grip, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Tristan deflects a lethal strike, screaming his excitement over the ringing steel. Apreuto's eyes narrow, coldly dissecting the wild swings. Tristan is mixing multiple sword styles, but Apreuto is already mapping every flaw. Tristan cackles, declaring this duel their anniversary. A shocked voice screams from the stands, while Alicia forces a nervous smile. Apreuto just glares, his irritation spiking at the sheer absurdity of the trash talk. Tristan taunts him to team up with Alicia, mocking his solo charge. Apreuto shatters the next strike, sparks flying. He throws the insult right back. Even with the Saintess buffing him, Tristan is still fighting alone. Tristan throws his head back, laughing in pure, exhilarating joy. He calls Apreuto something else, licking his lip as his playful energy instantly curdles into lethal intent. He drops a single, ominous promise. Tristan drives his blade forward, screaming at Apreuto not to make excuses when he loses. The steel locks in a brutal stalemate. Behind him, the Saintess stands motionless, her quiet prayers fueling his relentless assault. The crowd gasps, whispering about Tristan's prestigious lineage and the Saintess's divine buffs. He should be untouchable, yet across the arena, Apreuto holds the blade lock, completely unbothered by the impossible odds. Steel screams as they trade devastating blows, the arena echoing with the sheer force of their clash. Tristan fights with wild, manic excitement, while Apreuto moves with deadly, calculating precision. The crowd murmurs in awe at the beautiful, terrifying swordplay. The shockwave of their clash kicks up a storm of dust. Through the haze, Apreuto's eyes snap toward the stands. He spots Saintess Elizabeth, his gaze narrowing as a cold realization hits him. The Saintess channels a surge of radiant energy, her voice ringing out with a divine blessing. Tristan grips his hilt, feeling the power flood his veins. He shouts his gratitude, his body surging with newfound strength. Tristan roars in ecstatic shock, feeling his body overflow with raw power. He launches a devastating downward slash, the air itself crackling around the empowered, bloodthirsty strike. Tristan's speed and strength skyrocket, but a bead of sweat betrays his strain. Apreuto sees right through the blur. The raw power is there, but Tristan has no idea how to control it. He's not fighting a master, he's fighting a kid who just found a loaded gun. Up in the stands, the Saintess calmly calculates the true potential of her magic, envisioning an army stripped of fear. Down below, Tristan suddenly freezes. Apreuto has stopped talking, his silence sending a spike of pure unease through the battlefield. Apreuto's eyes narrow with lethal finality. He declares he's seen enough, his voice dead calm. His hand snaps to his hilt, the blade clearing the sheath with a vicious hiss. Tristan stammers in pure shock, the blood draining from his face. Apreuto stands with his back turned, his sword trailing dark, suffocating energy. The air warps with raw killing intent. The counterattack hits like a landslide. Tristan is driven backward, his empowered speed utterly useless as he carves a deep, jagged furrow through the stone arena. The duel ends in a single, perfect strike, and Apreuto doesn't even look back. Tristan chokes, his eyes wide with stunned disbelief as he crashes into the rubble. In the stands, the Saintess and Alicia freeze in pure horror. Apreuto smoothly sheathes his sword, coldly critiquing Tristan's slightly off precision. Tristan slumps against the cracked wall, completely spent. Apuruto turns to him, his expression calm and devoid of gloating. He promises a real, one-on-one rematch at the academy. No Sanctus blessings, just two swordsmen. Tristan manages a wistful smile, admitting Apuruto is going easy on him, and quietly surrenders. Apuruto looks past him, his eyes locking onto the Saintess in the distance. She stands with her eyes closed, making a strange, peaceful gesture. The announcer booms their victory, but Apuruto just turns and walks away, his face completely blank. Alicia stands frozen in the corridor, her hands clutching her arms as she trembles. She watches him leave, entirely ignored. Alicia's mind spirals into panic. She remembers Alto's fanatical hatred for the Arc family, his vows to destroy them. Seeing Apuruto's overwhelming power, the horrifying truth sinks in. Alto is walking straight into a massacre. Alicia realizes she has to warn him before it's too late. Far away, the opulent ballroom of the Arc Mansion glows under grand chandeliers where the core faction gathers in quiet elegance. A hand swirls red wine, and a single chilling word cuts through the room. Apuruto stands in the garden, praising his companions for their tireless training. He looks toward the future, reminding them that they are entering the academy. They all know the lie about social status not mattering. The hierarchy will always exist. Apuruto's voice sharpens as he lays out their brutal legacy. The Arc name is branded as scoundrels because they do the dirty work the world is too pure to handle. If that makes them villains, he will wear the title with pride. He declares their work saves lives, standing tall as he proclaims his pride in being an Arc. He asks why the world still mocks them. Wool steps forward, her young face grim, and delivers the devastating truth, because they believe the Arcs are weak. Apuruto's eyes burn with fierce conviction as he shouts their war cry. They will prove them wrong. They will show the world exactly what the Arc family is capable of, turning their shame into a weapon. Apuruto tells his companions they are no longer the weaklings who deserve mockery. Villains without power get trampled by those wielding justice. If they want to survive, they must stand and fight by his side. Apuruto vows to always stand at the front of their battle. He looks at his followers, telling them to take pride in their name. They will own the title of villain, even if the entire world spits on them for it. Apuruto rallies them to show the world the pride of the villainous Arc family. His companions shout their unwavering agreement. They march forward together, a united front declaring war on everyone who ever looked down on them. The Arc Mansion stands imposing under a clear sky. A dark-haired girl grabs her suitcase, casually telling Wool and Maria to unpack while she heads to the entrance ceremony. The Academy Arc officially begins. A sharp voice orders two subordinates to attend the Academy starting tomorrow. An ornate carriage rolls through the cobblestone streets, approaching the towering gates of Lenana Royal Academy. In the courtyard, students point, their whispers shifting to shock. Wool and Maria step onto the cobblestone path in their new uniforms, their faces set with quiet resolve. The courtyard falls into a hushed murmur as the crowd recognizes the distinct, elegant carriage of the Arc family. The crowd whispers his name, a mix of awe and dread rippling through the students. Apuruto steps out, his sharp eyes scanning the courtyard without a flicker of hesitation. His faction flanks him, a united front of pure intimidation. The whispers turn to terrified stammers as the students recognize the dangerous figures flanking Apuruto: Mad Dog Eurus, who bites nobles, and Lady Cruel, the deceptive belle of high society. Rumors of a dark organization swirl through the panicked crowd. Students hiss about his terrifying aura, realizing the rumors might actually be true. Apuruto ignores them, his sharp eyes focus on the path ahead. His first rule of the academy is already set: impressions are everything. Apuruto calculates the stakes, knowing he can never let them look down on him or his followers. Behind him, his companion fiercely declares that Absolute is the unrivaled force of power. They are just enrolling, they're planting a flag. Apuruto delivers the final blow to the courtyard's silence, declaring that the Arc family faction will prevail. The watching students physically shudder, sweat flying as the sheer, crushing weight of his proclamation hits them. Students nervously chatter, some dreaming of getting close to Lady Cruel, others terrified. A brutal flashback reminds them of what happens when someone crosses her. Absolute Arc beating a persistent suitor half to death. The warning is clear. The auditorium falls silent as the class rankings are announced. Chris Jose's world spins in a sickening blur of humiliation as he's declared a B-class student. He stammers his disgrace, feeling utterly worthless until a calm hand pats his shoulder. Miss Barraza flashes a bright grin, declaring she'll take over the supporting job for Lord Absolute. She admits she'd barely scraped C-class on her own, attributing her A-class placement entirely to Absolute's guidance. Miss teases a thoroughly annoyed Oriana Festa about making A-class. Apuruto watches the exchange with a focused, assessing gaze. Nearby, the stern headmaster takes the podium to officially welcome the freshmen. Lenana Royal Academy demands 3 years of mandatory enrollment for every noble. Wool and Chris sit content while Maria looks thoroughly irritated. Aparuto's sharp profile reveals the cold truth he's already figured out: grades don't matter, only true strength. Michael Lenana takes the stage, his earnest smile masking a sharp, solemn edge. He pledges to grow untainted by disgrace, his voice bright with rehearsed sincerity. But his rehearsed tone drops into something darker, bleeding a single, ominous promise into the silence. Michael's speech crescendos as he vows to forge unbreakable bonds and fight any evil that arises. His eyes blaze with a deep, personal drive behind the lofty ideals. The crowd applauds politely, but his pointed phrase hangs heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the villain sitting right below him. Aparuto analyzes the speech with cold precision, breaking down the plot for his companion. Michael is rallying the Academy to engineer his downfall and reclaim his stolen Crown Prince title. Stripping the title wasn't enough to break him, and Aparuto's silent pause is the quiet calculation of a predator moving his pieces. Aparuto maps out the battlefield in his mind. A hero, a saintess, and the former Crown Prince. He accepts the challenge without a flinch. In the end, only Absolute Arc will remain standing. The next morning, Aparuto rides through the Academy district. The main story is about to begin, and he refuses to let it play out exactly as written. Wool's voice breaks his dark focus. Wool and Maria watch their master, worried. Aparuto snaps back to reality and waves off their concern. He gives them their new orders: escort him and prepare his lunch. Inside the carriage, Aparuto tells the maids they will operate independently. They agree with sharp determination. The trio steps through the grand gates of Lenana Academy. The art fashion lines up to greet him. Aparuto immediately dismisses them, ordering the rest to wait in the holding area until lunch. He strides off with his core circle. Wool bounces with excitement, marveling at the massive academy grounds. Maria smirks, noting her friend has completely reverted to her energetic self, and asks what was bothering her lately. Wool stammers that she wants to be a refined maid like Maria, then instantly panics. Maria giggles and reassures her. But ahead of them, a light-haired faction member freezes, staring at Wool in absolute shock. The boy recoils, pointing and shouting that Wool is the fighter from the martial arts tournament. Her secret identity is blown wide open in the middle of the courtyard. Wool freezes, the terror of exposure crashing over her. Maria's expression hardens instantly. The boy stammers, realizing the simple maid standing next to them is a powerhouse. The boy stumbles back, shouting in confusion. Wool and Maria completely ignore him, turning to walk away. He lunges forward, begging them to wait, but Wool just smiles serenely and keeps walking. The boy reaches out to grab Wool. Maria slaps his hand away with a vicious smack. Her eyes blaze with cold fury, demanding to know if he realizes he's harassing a maid of the Art family. An iron grip clamps onto the boy's arm, lifting him off his feet. Maria snarls at him for making her the villain. He is forcefully dragged away, screaming for Alicia as the courtyard watches in stunned silence. Aparuto steps in, seizing the boy by the collar and claiming him. Maria's fury shifts into a dangerous, polite demand for the boy's family name so she can report this to their master. Alicia Marai steps forward, introducing herself and the trembling boy, Arto. Maria coldly introduces herself and Wool, declaring they will report the entire incident to Aparuto. Alicia's eyes widen in shock at their absolute dismissal. The crowd whispers in horror as the weight of the Arc family name drops. A furious voice screams across the entrance, scolding the boy for causing a scene on the very first day of the school year. Inside the cavernous training hall, students murmur at the sheer scale of the facility. A girl snaps at a boy named Alto to stop causing trouble. Above the chatter, a quiet observation spreads. Absolute still isn't here. Alicia sighs, exhausted from constantly cleaning up Alto's reckless messes. A smooth, predatory voice calls her name from the shadows. She snaps her head up as the Arc faction finally arrives. The courtyard remains locked in stunned silence as the faction member is hauled away. Wool and Maria's casual dismissal of the entire ordeal leaves the surrounding students completely bewildered. A dark-haired faction member deadpans that the academy is already a lost cause and asks if they should just leave. A light-haired girl tells Aparuto to take it easy, while a braided girl cheerfully reassures him that they have his back. The dark-haired girl's eyes burn with fury as she snaps at the entire room, asking if they have a death wish. Instantly, every single student in the hall drops to their knees, groveling in absolute terror. An instructor announces the first match, Alto versus an Arc faction member. Alto spirals into a panic, realizing his opponent is Absolute. Alicia warns him not to be reckless, but the damage is done. Alicia demands to know what Alto is doing. The ARC member stands in the arena, hands on hips, telling Alto to get into position. Alto stands frozen, the weight of the unwanted fight crushing him. Alto steps forward, trying to project confidence as the hero. His opponent just smirks, dismissing him entirely. Alto's blood runs cold as he realizes he is facing absolute ARC. Alto points a finger, demanding that if he wins, Abriuto will stop his evil ways and atone for mistreating a beastkin. Wolf freezes in the crowd. Alicia screams in pure horror at the death sentence. Alto just spoke aloud. Alto demands a full confession. Abriuto just stands there, internally wondering if the guy is high. He turns his back and starts walking away, completely ignoring the hero's screaming charge. The instructor yells that the fight hasn't even started. Alto ignores him, launching a desperate attack at Abriuto's back. Without even turning around, Abriuto casually backhands him into the ground. Alto screams that his strike is a holy purge of evil. A colossal explosion rocks the training floor, but when the smoke clears, Abriuto stands perfectly untouched in the center of the devastation. Alto's divine magic, meant to destroy the wicked, did absolutely nothing. Abriuto calmly brushes the dust off his shoulder, his voice dripping with icy amusement as he tells Alto he talks too much like a villain. Alicia realizes the holy purge completely failed. Abriuto smirks, mocking the title of hero. His faction members shout in alarm as a blade is drawn from its scabbard. The casual demonstration is over. Students rush forward, screaming at Alto for throwing a cheap shot. An ARC faction girl plants herself in the center, activating a defensive barrier and claiming the fight as her own. Abriuto's eyes narrow, hissing that he's being mocked. Alto grits his teeth, frustrated that his ultimate strike failed. He channels all his power into a single point, screaming the name of his attack, Holy Lance. A searing beam of light erupts across the arena. The beam tears across the floor, but Abriuto vanishes from its path. A mocking voice whispers that Alto is too slow. Abriuto closes the distance in a heartbeat, bypassing the attack entirely and landing a devastating punch. Abriuto's fist buries into Alto's gut with sickening force. The hero is lifted completely off his feet, his body buckling around the blow as every ounce of his righteous fury is redirected straight into his own spine. Alto crashes into a crumbling wall, spraying blood. Abriuto dusts off his uniform, bored, and tells him he lacks talent, but Alto pushes himself up, grinning through shattered teeth, screaming that it doesn't hurt at all. Broken and bloody, Alto refuses to stay down. He crawls across the shattered floor, swearing he won't lose to the ARC family. Summoning his last ounce of strength, he lunges forward in a final, desperate charge. Abriuto stands directly behind him, gripping his shoulder. Bones snap and his heart ruptures under the sheer kinetic force of the previous blow. Alto's eyes widen in shock before his legs give out completely. Alto coughs up a spray of blood and collapses face down into a growing pool. Alicia screams his name in pure horror. Alto's ruined face presses against the floor, his eyes still burning with defiant hatred. Abriuto stands over him, delivering a cold verdict: without power, ideals are meaningless. Alto forces himself up, blood streaming, and screams that he will defeat Abriuto and rescue that girl. Abriuto accepts the title. He is the worst villain this kingdom has ever seen. He turns his back on the broken hero, his silhouette fading into dark swirling energy as he leaves him in the dust. Alicia catches Alto's limp body, cradling him in silent horror. He lies alone on the training hall floor, utterly defeated. His right eye is swollen shut, his last defiant roar reduced to a memory. Abriuto looks down at the fallen hero, utterly unmoved. He sees right through Alto's belief that killing him will save everyone. Killing him won't change a thing. The system will just replace him with another villain. Abriuto barks rapid orders. Oriana is to guard the hero, Mist is to tie him to a pillar, and the instructors need to be rounded up. He grants permission to strike Alto down if he moves. His maids snap to attention. Sanus Elizabeth kneels beside Alto, vowing to heal him. Abriuto watches completely unmoved before cutting through the silence. He accuses her directly of orchestrating Alto's reckless rampage. Elizabeth raises her hands, playing the innocent Sanus and claiming she has nothing to hide. Abriuto's voice slices through her denial from the shadows, asking who the real mastermind is, if not her. Her composure cracks. Alicia watches the aftermath, visibly shaken and sweating. She whispers to herself that she can't believe this is happening. When a companion asks if she's unwell, she forces a smile, wishing this was all just a bad dream. A high-ranking noblewoman paces the halls, furious that a commoner insulted the ARC family. She clenches her fist, resolved to offer Lord Absolute a formal apology before things escalate. She spots him walking down the hall and calls out. Abriuto corners. Elizabeth, accusing her of using a skill to manipulate Alto on purpose. She denies it, but students in the hallway start whispering. Suddenly, her mask slips, and she gasps out a terrified realization about the hero. Alicia overhears the exchange and freezes. A dark realization hits her. The Art family is conspiring with the church to bring down the Mirai family. She spins around and sprints down the corridor in a blind panic. A braided girl from Alicia's circle rounds a corner and slams right into Apparuto. She stumbles back, letting out a panicked squeak as the terrifying reality of who he is crashes over her. A noblewoman stammers his title in the background. The girl tries to apologize for the morning's maid incident. Apparuto doesn't even glance her way, his profile sharp and dismissive as he walks past. She collapses to her knees, sobbing into the empty hallway as he leaves her shattered. The dining hall erupts. A noble drops his fork in sheer disbelief, demanding to know if Lord Absolute really beat the hero barehanded. A braided girl gushes that he didn't even use magic or a sword, while a shaken maid confirms the spectacle left her eyes burning. Alicia Mirai pushes through the gossiping crowd, desperate to see Apparuto. Her request never makes it past the door. Apparuto coldly denies the audience, ordering his maid to inform the Mirai family that the Arcs are filing an official complaint. Apparuto mutters his disgust at the hero's behavior, only to be handed a second insult. A maid reports that Wool was harassed that morning. Before the panic can set in, Oriana steps up, quietly taking Wool to a cafe to calm her nerves while the Arc family's wrath quietly expands. Wool stares at a towering parfait. Her earlier terror melted into pure, giddy joy. She claps her hands, thanking Apparuto for bringing her to her favorite cafe. He doesn't even look up from his own dessert, coldly telling her to just eat. Maria stares at her master a second too long. Apparuto's voice drops to a lethal whisper, threatening to gouge her eyes out if she keeps looking. She flinches in terror, while he calmly takes a bite of his Mont Blanc, wondering if his sudden taste for sweets belongs to the original Absolute. Maria notes the rare sight of him enjoying a meal, offering to serve it at the mansion. Apparuto declines, admitting only that it's delicious. Wool suddenly declares the parfait would be her final meal before death, freezing Maria in sheer shock. Apparuto cuts through the sugar rush, asking Wool if the hero approached her that morning. She shivers, recalling how creepy and overly familiar he acted before Maria shut him down. Apparuto leans back, realizing that without the bias of hero worship, protagonists just look like stalkers. Apparuto's tone shifts from casual to deadly serious. He orders Maria and Wool to protect themselves when he isn't around, reminding them he already gave them the means to do it. They snap to attention, their loyalty absolute under the Academy's grand facade. In a lavish sitting room, an ally questions Apparuto's aggressive posture toward the Mirai family, warning it might provoke their neighbors. Apparuto doesn't even turn from the window. He already has the royal family's backing, and his only focus is securing the Arc family's absolute power. The ally lays out the final calculus. The royal pardons saved the hero's life, but the Mirai family still owes blood. Apparuto gives a cold, indifferent nod, telling him to do as he wishes. The advisor's eyes narrow, vowing to show the Mirais no mercy for failing to leash their monster. Apparuto's smirk widens into a predatory grin, declaring there will be no mercy for his enemies. The door clicks open. Maria announces the Mirai family's arrival, and Apparuto turns, ready to orchestrate the hero's complete downfall. The Mirai family waits in the drawing room, entirely unaware of the political crosshairs they're standing in. Three noble factions are already circling, waiting for the hero's disaster to sever his ties from the Mirai name. A cold-eyed noble lady clenches her fan, seeing a golden opportunity to cut the dead weight loose. A noble lady advises Alicia to retreat and rebuild trust with the king, warning that the Art family holds all the cards. Alicia's eyes burn with a fierce, desperate light. She refuses to submit, silently vowing to break the Art family no matter the cost. Apparuto turns his icy gaze on Marquis Mirai, dissecting his failure to raise the hero. Alicia shrinks beside her father as Apparuto offers them seats with deceptive politeness. Then, he drops the trap, asking if the Marquis is trying to pin all the blame on his daughter. The Marquis bows deep, offering a strained apology and claiming he's placed the hero under house arrest. Apparuto cuts him off, his voice low and dangerous. He demands to know what exactly they've been teaching the hero, reminding the Marquis that a commoner who commits a crime doesn't get a free pass. Apparuto leans in, accusing the Mirai family of teaching the hero that the Arcs are criminals. The Marquis panics, vehemently denying it and shoving Alicia forward. He roars at his daughter, blaming her entirely for the hero's education and the family's ruin, while Apparuto watches the pathetic display with cold contempt. Alicia bursts into tears, stammering an apology, but her father just screams at her to shut up. Apuruto's voice cuts through the screaming, deadlier than before. He tells the Marquis that if he keeps up this farce, he will kill him, watching with satisfaction as the man completely breaks. Apuruto lays down the art family's terms with surgical precision. The Moraes will pay for the damaged estate, hand over $2 billion in compensation, and the hero will be suspended until his half is paid. Alicia watches in stunned horror as Apuruto declares that objections will not be accepted. The Marquis screams at the $2 billion figure, but Apuruto isn't finished. He drops the real killing blow. The engagement between the hero and Alicia is annulled. Alicia freezes as Apuruto casually points out that the hero should have been executed, and they are only surviving because of the royal family's mercy. Apuruto twists the knife, offering a cruel sliver of hope that they might reverse the annulment if they pay in full. Then his advisor drops the final bomb. The Marquis is being transferred to the royal court, a political exile that strips him of all local power. The Marquis shatters, screaming and shoving Alicia forward to take the blame. Apuruto pins the Marquis with a single devastating question. He dismantles the man's defense, reminding him that as the head of the house, the responsibility is entirely his. Alicia realizes her father's betrayal was for nothing, leaving the Marquis sweating and utterly cornered. The Marquis hangs his head, completely defeated, as his young son calls out to him. The advisor quietly orders the transfer to proceed. Apuruto turns away, declaring the settlement concluded with a flat, bored admission that their demands were entirely one-sided. Apuruto delivers the final political execution. The Marquis will be stripped of his head of house title. Across the room, Alicia crumbles. Tears stream down her face as she whispers that it's all her fault, apologizing for her own failure and the ruin she's brought upon her family. The accusations pile up. The hero's hostility, the harassment, the criminal slander, the attack on a teacher. Alicia finally snaps. She clutches her head, screaming that it's all her fault and demanding to know why she's the only one paying for his sins, crying that she hasn't done anything wrong. A light-haired companion despairs, admitting there's no way to stand up to someone with Apuruto's power. Alicia completely shatters, gasping that she can't do it anymore. She turns to her companion, choking out an apology for the pain she's caused, finally realizing she's been acting like a victim while someone else bled. Alicia weeps, suddenly feeling a gentle clasp on her hands. A bright light envelops her, washing away the physical toll of her breakdown. She gasps in wide-eyed shock, realizing she's being healed. Apuruto stares down at her, his tone heavy with finality as he speaks her name. Alicia stands wrapped in the fading glow of the magic, her tears finally stopping. Apuruto steps directly in front of her, his hand resting on her shoulder like an anchor to keep her from falling apart. The Saintess steps in, her voice firm as she absolves Alicia of all blame. She places the responsibility squarely on the rampaging hero, his enabling father, and herself. Alicia snaps her head up, screaming in raw denial that the Saintess is not at fault. Alicia clutches Apuruto's hand, crying that he's the one who's been hurt. Apuruto sharply denies it, telling her she is the victim. He admits his own failure, saying if he had shown overwhelming power from the start, the hero never would have touched her, before quietly telling her she can hate him as she wants. Apuruto holds her hand, declaring himself the villain of this country. He offers her an out, telling her to blame everything on him so she can finally be at peace. Alicia smiles through her tears, squeezes his hand, and gently declines, refusing to dump her pain onto someone else. Alicia explains she'll save her frustrations for someone actually guilty, like the hero. Apuruto silently agrees that bottling it up just makes you look like an idiot. As she walks away, she cheerfully tells him he's a surprisingly good person, leaving him staring in pure disbelief. Apuruto calls out to Alicia, dropping a bomb without a shred of preamble. He asks if she will come work under him. Alicia freezes, tears welling in her eyes as the weight of the offer crashes over her, leaving her completely speechless. Alicia stammers, entirely lost. Apuruto lays it out plainly: give up her seat as heir, sever her ties to the hero, and come to him. Then, with the casual tone of someone ordering lunch, he adds that doing it as an engagement would be the most convenient. Apuruto extends his hand, his voice firm and unyielding as he speaks her full name. He tells her to take his hand. Alicia trembles, tears still glistening on her cheeks, as she slowly lifts her own hand toward his, bridging the gap between their shattered worlds. The Morai Manor falls under a shadow as the hero's fate is read like a death sentence. His engagement is over, he owes $1 billion in compensation, and he's suspended. Alto clenches his fists in the dark, a single tear falling as he chokes out a broken apology to Alicia. Alto desperately tries to explain his rampage, claiming he felt an unnatural, overwhelming euphoria that made him feel unstoppable. Alicia stares in shock, asking if he was on drugs. Alto admits he lost control, then lashes out in frustration, regretting that he challenged Absolute before gathering his supporters. Alto insists Absolute orchestrated the whole thing, but Alicia just sighs in pure disappointment. Alto sneers that he's disappointed in her, claiming Absolute at least has pride in battle. Alicia whips around, eyes blazing, and warns him that if he keeps insulting Apriyuto, she will never forgive him. Alto stubbornly insists the Arc family is evil and had to be stopped. Alicia leans forward, her voice sharp with pain, asking if the people he hurt weren't proof enough. She declares that a hero's power isn't meant to be used to play judge, leaving Alto slumped and utterly defeated. Alto grimly declares they must atone, ordering Alicia to work as an adventurer to pay for her disgrace. Alicia turns her back on him, cutting him off with a cold, absolute command to leave. Alto stands stricken, his fist clenched in utter defeat as she shuts him out. Alone in the empty room, Alicia stretches, feeling the heavy burden of her engagement finally lift. She admits it always felt like dealing with an annoying little brother, and she's finally mentally at ease. Then, Apriyuto's voice cuts through the silence, offering his hand once more. Alicia stares at his outstretched palm, her hands trembling. She apologizes, turning away to declare she can't do it. The Mirai domain is her territory, and she refuses to abandon her people just to escape her own misery. Sitting alone, Alicia twists a strand of hair, remembering Apriyuto's offer to let her blame him. She admits to herself she could never take that easy way out. A sad smile touches her lips as she wonders if she should have accepted his proposal after all. Under a full moon, a hooded figure approaches through the dark. An old man lies bloodied at his feet, spitting curses at the fiend who destroyed him. Apriyuto Arc answers with a cold, silent sword stroke, standing alone over the broken body. The old man clings to his last breath, staring up in disbelief as his life flashes before him. He dies wondering what his existence was even for. Apriyuto stands over him, his face a mask of bloody resolution as a single drop of blood falls from his blade. The driving rain washes over the aftermath of the brutal strike. The old man's final, despairing cry echoes into the night. Apriyuto remains perfectly still, his cold resolution unbroken as the blood drips from his sword to the earth. A character wakes in a lavish room, clutching their head in the grip of a nightmare. They realize the original Absolute could kill without guilt because death was just an everyday occurrence in this world. The dark, unforgiving reality of their new life settles heavily over them. Walking down a grand corridor, a character is confronted about the lives they've taken. A girl leans in with a bright smile, calling them surprisingly kind. The character's expression remains a cold, shadowed mask as they reply that they are, in fact, evil. Standing before a portrait of his ancestor, Apriyuto reflects on his bloodline's legacy. He acknowledges that taking a life is evil, no matter the justification or the mission. He walks down the colonnade alone, his face set in absolute certainty as he embraces the monster the world sees. Back at the academy, Alicia walks the halls, tense and nervous about her first day back since the rampage. She pushes open a door, bracing herself. Instantly, her friends spot her, their faces lighting up with pure, joyful surprise as they shout her name. Alicia is immediately swarmed by her classmates, their warm chorus of welcomes washing over her. She smiles, reassuring them that she's fine now. But as her friends laugh, one of them pauses, her smile fading as she spots an unexpected figure watching from the end of the corridor. Alicia spots Apriyuto across the hallway. Her friends chatter, but her focus locks on him. She forces a shaky smile, steeling herself to say hello after everything that happened. She calls out a cheerful greeting. Apriyuto doesn't even turn around. He just mutters a cold dismissal, annoyed by the noise. Christina Zen steps right into the hallway, locking eyes with Apriyuto. She loudly declares she's challenging him today, leaving no room for refusal. The hallway erupts. Students are stunned. Christina never uses first names. She ignores them, leaning in to taunt him about valuing his friends, telling him to take Mist with him if he wants a fight. Alicia's friends immediately start gossiping. They whisper about the massive magic demonstration Apriyuto and Christina put on while Alicia was away. One girl points out that Christina started showing interest in him right after that day. Alicia's smile tightens. The jealousy hits her hard, and she quietly realizes she isn't the only one paying attention to him. Apriyuto turns his cold gaze fully on Alicia, impatiently asking what she wants. Flustered and overwhelmed by the whispers and her own jealousy, Alicia loses her filter. She blurts out the accusation right to his face, calling him a womanizer. Apriyuto just stares at her, completely baffled. He has no idea what she's talking about. Before he can respond, Alicia's friends swarm her, eagerly offering to share their notes and help her catch up on missed lessons. They wrap her in a bubble of normalcy, leaving the self-proclaimed villain standing there, utterly lost. Alicia forces a bright smile and turns to a new face, introducing herself to Princess Leone of Sueroku. Leone smiles back, gracious and open. They exchange polite small talk about adapting to life in Reinana. Alicia offers her help if she ever runs into trouble, playing the perfect, cordial noble. Christina is thrilled. She clasps her hands, accepting Alicia's offer to help and declaring it's the best. The girls spend the day chatting and embracing, Alicia genuinely happy. Meanwhile, Christina daydreams, surrounded by imaginary sparkles, absolutely reveling in a peaceful school life now that the hero Alto is out of the picture. Night falls over the Arc mansion. Inside the study, Apriyuto looks up as his butler hands him a letter from the villain. He reads it, his eyes narrowing. Without wasting a second, he turns to his maid Maria and orders her to get ready. It's time for work. Deep in a tavern in the Flower Territory, the remnants of the Suiroku dark organization Gilius drink in frustration. One man lights a cigarette, his eyes hard. He vows that his revenge in this country isn't gonna just fade away. Flashback to the power struggle that broke Gilius. Once thousands strong, they are now down to a pathetic 50 members. Their leader stares at the floor, admitting the bitter reality. To survive and regain power, they have to join an underground faction in Reincarnated 1 secretly backed by the Arc household. The Gilius boss seethes. Their funds are gone after a botched robbery, and the guards dismiss their threats. With nothing left to lose, his fury boils over. If the current path is dead, they'll just have to take a much darker, more dangerous one. A hooded figure stands before the desperate Gilius remnants. The men confirm they want the Arc household's protection, voices cracking. One bursts into tears, swearing they'll prove their worth. Another slides a tribute across the floor in complete submission. The hooded figure just smirks in silence. The tribute is revealed, twin sisters snatched from a Suiroku noble, trembling on the floor. The older girl clutches her sibling. The captors boast that Gilius specializes in abductions and has foreign ties, practically begging to be useful. The younger sister just whispers a terrified number sode of all. A sharp, shadowed gaze cuts through the dark. A light-haired Gilius member stammers, asking for a verdict. The voice above him is cool and final. It acknowledges their passion, but delivers the killing blow. They've been turned down. The man stands alone, surrounded by the groaning bodies of his defeated comrades. Rain pours down as Apriyuto Arc stands over the broken remnants of Gilius. His face is cold, hand resting on his sword. He delivers the final verdict. They don't measure up to the Arc household's standards. He turns his back on their pleas, his silhouette cutting through the storm. Birds scatter from the roof. The hooded figure stands amid the carnage, delivering the reason. The Arc household doesn't stoop to kidnapping. A bloody Gilius member slumps against the wall, staring in bewildered despair. They brought kidnapped twins to prove their worth, not realizing it was the exact reason they'd be slaughtered. The defeated man looks up at the hooded figure, a bitter, broken laugh escaping him. He resents the sheer imbalance of power. He spits that it must feel great to do whatever you want with that kind of strength. His gaze hardens, his words hanging in the air like a blade. The man snaps. His face twists with venomous fury as he screams at Apriyuto's unreadable mask. He demands to know why he's looking at them like that. If he's so strong, he roars, he should at least torment them with a smile. It's a raw, insane demand for the villain to revel in his cruelty. The man screams at him not to look at him with those eyes. But Apriyuto's internal monologue cuts through the rage. He lists the visceral horrors of violence, the scent of blood, the feeling of his sword-piercing flesh, and declares his absolute hatred for it. He vows that if he ever enjoys inflicting pain, he'll be a true monster. The hooded figure appears before Mist with a cheerful smile, thanking her for her hard work. Mist confirms she ignored the peeping Tom, just as instructed. When asked who it was, she gestures to a crumpled body on the rooftop. It's the ringleader who guided Gilius into the country. The operation is a complete success. In a carriage, a hooded figure drops serious intel on their companion. The man they're dealing with is the Negotiator, an antagonist from the original story who does business exclusively with criminal organizations. He's a nightmare to catch because of his teleportation skill, capable of vanishing at will and making trouble on a kingdom-wide scale. The narration reveals the Negotiator's true cost. He's the main culprit behind the original story's field training disaster, where he released countless monsters and slaughtered students, including those from the art faction. The anger in the hooded figure's eyes is palpable. This isn't just a mission, it's personal. The hooded figure orders the Brusa household to withdraw and take the captive twin sisters with them. A hand gently touches one sister's head in reassurance. The girls look up, their terror shifting to cautious relief. The figure sighs, realizing they're nobles from Suiroku. The rescue just became a massive political complication. Apriyuto pauses at a doorway, sword in hand. When asked what he's doing, he coldly replies he's going to collect a viewing fee from the peeping bastard. He strides through the trees, his silhouette cutting through the shadows, heading straight for the hidden orchestrator known as the Negotiator. The Negotiator trudges through the dark woods, the weight of his miscalculation crashing down. Making an enemy of the Arc household means a nasty death. Footsteps echo behind him. He freezes but sees nothing. Coins flash through his mind. He realizes he took a deal that put him directly in the crosshairs of the most dangerous household in the kingdom. The Negotiator brushes back his cloak, grinning. Watching the Ark household's power firsthand will sell for a fortune. He whistles a tune, mentally planning his exit. But then, a luminous figure steps calmly from the shadows. Long hair catches the light, robes drifting with unnatural grace. The negotiator's exit just closed. A girl with a flower crown freezes, staring in awe at a high-ranking spirit hovering nearby. She wonders why it's here. Her attention drops to the ground. The shadows of the trees writhe and stretch. Several dark, elongated hands made of pure shadow slowly rise from the earth, grasping toward her. The negotiator watches the spirit and remembers the Black Fairy's leader was a spirit user. Recognition slams into her. Her eyes go wide. Aparudo Ark steps forward, hood drawn, and casually introduces himself as Absolute Ark. The teleporting ghost who thought she could slip away stands frozen. The hunter just walked out of the dark. Aparudo points directly at the negotiator, accusing her of smuggling Villainous into the country. Her eye goes wide, sweat beating as she mutters about how unpleasant his presence is. A sharp crack of energy echoes. Aparudo looms over her, dark energy coiling around his fingers. The teleporter has run out of room. The negotiator is on her knees in the pouring rain, trembling and gasping. Aparudo's voice cuts through the storm, asking if she wants to be killed. She won't look up, she won't speak. Aparudo's patience thins. He steps closer, irritated by her silence, demanding she be reasonable. The ghost who slipped through every net is cowering in the mud. Clutching her hood, the negotiator whispers that she might really get killed. Forcing herself to breathe, she triggers her teleportation skill, but the burst of light cuts short. Her eyes widen in pure terror. Her only escape route has failed. On her hands and knees, the negotiator screams as her skill refuses to fire. She tries again and again. Bursts of light erupt and die, her body convulsing. Nothing happens. Aparudo looms over her, his voice dangerously quiet. Her one talent, the thing that made her untouchable, has been sealed shut. Aparudo's voice drips with irritation, asking if she really thought she could just leave. The negotiator claws at her hood, gasping in terror. Aparudo reveals the truth. A custom magic tool from the King of Reincarnated is blocking her teleportation. He went out of his way to get it just for her. She's pinned by an invisible cage. Aparudo holds up the blocking tool, coldly satisfied. He reveals he let her run on purpose. Catching her earlier would have been a hassle, so he orchestrated this entire confrontation, letting her watch the Villainous fight just to corner her with a ton of questions. Aparudo grabs the negotiator by the collar, yanking her face to face in the rain. He lays out her entire plan, using the Academy's outdoor training to unleash a horde of monsters. The impact hits her like a physical blow. Her eye trembles, wide with shattered horror. He knows everything. The negotiator's mind races. Only a handful of people could know about the conflict between Villainous and the Black Fairy faction. The horror crystallizes. He wasn't chasing her. He let her run. Every move she made was part of his design. She's not just beaten, she's been a pawn on a board she never even saw. Aparudo's face is unreadable as the rain streaks past his hood. A cold realization settles in his eyes. Beside him, the negotiator lets out a piercing, wordless scream of pure despair, clutching her head. Aparudo's internal monologue concludes with chilling clarity. He underestimated their capabilities. The negotiator sprints through the rain-soaked forest, her mind screaming that she doesn't want to die. She crashes through branches fueled by pure survival instinct, but Aparudo is relentless, a silent shadow closing the gap. She realizes with terrified frustration that he's following her way too closely. The negotiator tears through the forest, screaming that he's definitely toying with her. Behind her, Aparudo moves with unnerving calm. He doesn't even run. He simply appears in her path, his hooded figure materializing as if the trees rearranged for him. He asks if they're done playing tag. She skids to a halt, realizing it's do or die. Aparudo's sword cuts through the rain, not to wound, but to sever the ground in front of her feet. The dark blade bites deep with a deafening crash, stopping her dead. The sheer force of the strike splinters the earth. There is nowhere left to run. Aparudo stands over the shattered negotiator. His voice cuts through the downpour with cold finality. She can't buy her life with money. For the first time, the ghost who traded in blood looks small and utterly human. Aparudo's judgment falls like a blade, calling her a greedy fool as a streak of steel flashes. The rain and bloodshed fade. Deep beneath the Ark mansion, in the Ark household's basement, cracked stone walls and worn steps descend into darkness. A long corridor stretches toward an impenetrable black void. Hands adjust cuffs, preparing for something deliberate and grim. The dim corridor stretches into the dark. A stained white apron hangs on the stone wall. A young servant with dark hair stands before the grim scene. With a calm, detached expression, he pulls on a pair of tight gloves, his hands flexing. The chains and empty manacles on the walls await. The negotiator wakes up chained to a wooden chair, head still hooded, blood soaking through their white clothes. The young servant stands over them, watching with detached calm. He tells them to wake up, noting they held out for a while. The negotiator coughs, body jerking against the restraints, barely conscious. The interrogation continues. The servant's voice is cold with grudging respect as he admits he didn't think they'd hold out this long. He hovers a gloved hand over a tray of menacing tools, concluding he'll have to resort to truth serum. He leans in and asks who hired them. Through the bloody hood, a single fragmented word claws its way out. Eliza. The confession hangs in the dripping air. Saint Eliza. In a separate, bright room, Alicia, Wool, and their companion freeze. Their expressions shift to collective shock. One whispers the name in disbelief. A sharp, knowing gaze narrows. The doubt is instant and absolute. That can't be right. A dark-haired character dismisses the accusation in his internal monologue. There's no way she pulled this off alone. Even if she's a saint, she's still just a 15-year-old girl. The scene cuts to the imposing spire of a grand church, steeped in shadow. A single candle flickers in the darkness, steadfast against the night. Saint Eliza smiles with chilling innocence, confirming the creatures acquired through the negotiator are fully prepared. Across the table, Cardinal Nemuria listens with quiet approval. She adds that all that's left is to release them on the day of the operation. The 15-year-old saint isn't a pawn, she's a player, and the church itself is backing her. Michael Reincarnated leans back with a carefree smile, telling a young nun that they don't need to thank him, but his expression sharpens. He asks if they're still good on the contract. The nun answers simply, as soon as this matter is settled, she will renew her vow to support his reinstatement as crown prince. A displaced prince and a church-backed nun binding themselves together. Apariuto's eyes narrow as the pieces click into place. He realizes the Reincarnated church is the one behind it. His companions wear expressions of deep concern. Across from them, Cardinal Nemuria, Saint Eliza, and a smugly smiling Michael Reincarnated loom over the scene. The cardinal's voice drips with arrogant challenge, telling absolute art to enjoy himself while he can. The enemy is an entire church faction. Splintered furniture and fresh debris mark the classroom where the hero just went on a violent rampage. A dark-haired student corners a long-haired girl, accusing her of using her insight skill to weaponize the hero against him. She throws her hands up in practiced innocence, smiling as she demands proof. She drops the innocent act just enough to deliver the killing blow. She has no proof, and her skill leaves no traceable mana. A blood-soaked survivor from the rampage confirms the grim reality. Saint Eliza's insight targets the brain directly, making it completely invisible. The dark-haired student clenches his jaw, forced to admit she's untouchable, while her cold, unreadable gaze never flickers. Saint Eliza leans in, utterly unbothered, and asks what he plans to do without a single shred of evidence. Apariuto doesn't flinch, his voice dropping into a dangerous promise as he tells her he'll overlook it this time. But he draws a hard line in the sand. She just made an enemy of the Ark household, and she will eventually reap what she's sown. The imposing spire of a grand church looms over the sky, a silent monument to the power now hunting him. Apariuto's mind clicks the pieces together with horrifying clarity. The hero's rampage wasn't a random accident, but a deliberate strike reeking of Eliza's hostility. The true mastermind behind the field training isn't just a rogue saint, it's the entire church institution. Apariuto watches Saint Eliza walk into the classroom, her demure smile and closed eyes painting the perfect picture of a sheltered, harmless girl. He sees through the performance completely, his narrowed eyes calculating the sheer scale of her deception. She's been playing the helpless saint from the very beginning, and he silently curses her for what an absolute actress she is. The teacher cheerfully announces next week's field training in the southern forest, where students will hunt monsters for 3 days. He casually mentions that the truly dangerous beasts have already been cleared out, but a classmate's ominous mutter about things getting in the way hangs in the air. The trap is officially set, and most of the class has no idea they are the prey. Apariuto immediately shifts into high gear, analyzing the church's true objective as he steps onto the grand staircase. They are targeting him, or someone from the Ark faction, but a darker variable haunts his thoughts. In the original story, Christina died during this exact event, adding another innocent life to the stakes he now carries. A fierce senior maid grips her broom like a weapon, violently sweeping the floor as she bellows at a stiff rookie. She roars that hard work and cleaning is the only thing in life that guarantees results, demanding absolute perfection. The rookie just stands there, hands clasped behind her back, taking the verbal beating in silence. Deep in the basement, the white-haired negotiator listens to her captors dismiss her depressing demeanor, her torture leaving her enslaved but deemed useful for her skills. Meanwhile, Ark returns to the grand hall, greeted by a dark-haired maid who sprints over and cheers his arrival with pure excitement. Watching the lively scene, the negotiator offers a faint, bemused smile, quietly admitting the boy who enslaved her is surprisingly useful. The smitten maid gushes to anyone listening about Apariuto's ability to teleport, and his quick learning, swooning over how amazing he is. Nearby, a stern maid violently drags a bewildered blonde butler away to execute some petty revenge scheme. Left alone with her broom, the first maid's blush fades into a quiet, distant thought, her mind lingering on something she can't quite articulate. A vast forested valley stretches between the mountains as academy students gather with carriages and horses for the field training. Apriyuto steps down from his carriage, his gaze sharp and cold, utterly prepared for the deadly trap waiting in the trees. A light-haired companion flinches at his grim expression, but Apriyuto flatly dismisses it as just his natural face. The teachers announce the start of the exercise, ordering students to form faction groups and stick to predetermined routes to avoid trouble. A dark-haired girl listens with a tense, sweating expression as the church's design officially begins. The factions line up with stark contrasts. The royal group lounges in confidence, while St. Eliza's church faction stands in eerie, silent uniformity. The girls and noble factions chatter or cluster quietly, but the merged Arc and Princess Leone group looks entirely lost and out of their depth. Apriyuto stands among the confused crowd, walking straight into the church's snare. Princess Leone firmly demands to know why the two most capable students were specifically assigned to flank her. The teacher doesn't flinch, citing national security and the council's refusal to exempt royalty from the lesson. Apriyuto stands with an unreadable expression, realizing he's been deliberately placed directly beside the princess in the middle of a lethal trap. The teacher doubles down on the safety excuse, and Princess Leone lowers her gaze to accept the arrangement with quiet dignity. Apriyuto seethes internally at the hassle of babysitting, his mind cutting through the political maneuvering. In the original story, Leone was supposed to be with the hero. The church deliberately dumped her here to isolate them both and let the forest finish the job. Princess Leone offers a polite introduction, quickly followed by Apriyuto's direct demeanor and Lady Cruel's eager declaration of honor. The rest of the Arc faction chimes in with earnest pledges, prompting Leone to warmly note how well they all seem to get along. The diplomatic moment immediately shatters when a faction member scolds someone off-screen for their terrible greeting etiquette. Princess Leone introduces herself with a polite smile, admitting she prefers a sword over magic, but her composure suddenly shatters with a shocked gasp. The entire group falls into a dead, tense silence around her. Apriyuto steps forward, fixing her with a cold, unwavering gaze as he tells her there is a condition she must agree to if he's going to protect her. Leone concedes she is intruding and asks if he can accommodate the kingdom-mandated maid assigned to her. Apriyuto lays down his rules without hesitation. She will follow his orders and never isolate herself, and he will provide his own maid Maria as a bodyguard. Before the turns can settle, a quiet voice cuts in, asking for a moment of their time. A blonde girl steps into the clearing with a bright, competitive smile, dropping a cheerful greeting before challenging Absolute Arc to a monster hunting contest. Christina watches with weary exasperation as the challenger lays out the terms. A girl wielding a massive weapon eagerly accepts the challenge, while another faction member mutters they'll only join if they feel like it. A crying girl dramatically laments Apriyuto ignoring her and hiding behind Braza, but his mind is entirely focused on Christina. He notes her high magical skill, finding her death in the original story deeply puzzling, and briefly wonders if he could change her fate by staying close. He immediately shuts the thought down with a firm, hardened resolve, dismissing the possibility entirely. Apriyuto's jaw tightens as he curses his own nature, reminding himself he's the villain, not a hero of justice. He forces himself to focus on the immediate threat of the church's monsters, but looking at his own hands, the crushing weight of his inability to save everyone hits him. Somewhere in the forest, bodies are already hitting the ground, and Christina Zen suddenly appears in the chaos. A haunted look crosses Apriyuto's face as he mutters a quiet, heavy apology to the air. A girl notices the shift and gently asks what's bothering him, but he smoothly deflects, brushing past her to say he has things to do. He tells her to take Mist for company instead, leaving her to let out an exasperated sigh as he walks away, burdened by the deaths he knows are coming. Apriyuto coldly dismisses Baraza for being too weak, prompting a flustered protest from a nearby girl over his harsh phrasing. He ignores it and turns to Chris, apologizing for the delay, which Chris earnestly brushes off. As they prepare to enter the trees, they confirm their path is the F route. Apriyuto's tactical mind immediately spots the flaw in their positioning on Route D, noting the groups are close enough to be hit by a coordinated strike. His thoughts plunge into the worst-case scenario, visualizing the complete annihilation of the Arc faction and the forest floor littered with his allies' bodies. He clenches his fist with cold resolve, vowing to keep his guard up against the impending slaughter. The church's trap springs to life as feral, skull-faced monsters burst through the tree line with terrifying speed and gnashing teeth. An Arc faction fighter cleaves through the vanguard, scattering gore, but the sheer numbers quickly overwhelm the defensive line. Panic erupts when a sword-wielding girl lunges toward Princess Leone, screaming that the beasts are bypassing the fighters and heading straight for the princess. Mist reacts instantly, hurling a jagged ice lance that shatters the charging monsters into a burst of frozen shrapnel. But the swarm doesn't stop, with more beasts leaping over the frozen carnage, their teeth bared directly at the royal. A panicked warning rings out as the creatures close in on the princess. Oriana unleashes a devastating slash, cleaving a lunging monster in half as she coolly announces her sector is cleared. Amidst the chaos, another girl urgently asks about the princess's safety. Oriana doesn't hesitate, wading right back into the fray as her sword sings through the swarming creatures. Princess Leone tears through the wave with desperate efficiency, but the sheer volume of monsters pouring in is staggering. Apriuto stands completely removed from the slaughter, arms crossed and visibly bored, while a companion explains he's hanging back to let the others gain experience. He mutters under his breath, acutely feeling the princess silently glaring at him to get off his ass and fight. In the bloody aftermath, Apriuto's faction catches their breath, with the girls cheerfully insisting they aren't tired at all. They tell Absolute Sama to just sit back and relax while they handle the low-level monsters, completely taking the spotlight. One girl leans in with a bright smile, offering him a drink from her water bottle. Apriuto's inner monologue cuts through the cheer, heavy with the irony that his own team is now worrying about him while he drowns in guilt. The group settles into a forest picnic, spreading a blanket and unwinding as a maid serves drinks. Despite the lighthearted complaints about lukewarm water, Apriuto sits isolated in his thoughts, the weight of his villainous role hanging over the piece. A girl takes a sip and praises the crisp, refined taste, asking where the water came from. The casual reply that it's the lady's water hits like a grenade, freezing the drinker in absolute horror. A light-haired girl beams, confirming she produced it with water magic, while the first girl's face drains of color as the gross implication fully crashes over her. The horrified girl stammers out the awful word, but a dark-haired companion fiercely glares and cuts her off, threatening her not to say it out loud. The tension breaks as the rest of the group bursts into laughter at her panicked reaction. The joyride shatters instantly when a sharp voice yells for them to look, drawing Apriuto and a flower-crowned girl to stare at a new disruption in the clearing. Apriuto's voice cuts through the clearing with cold decisiveness as he orders Mist to set up a strong barrier, telling her he'll be gone for 15 minutes. A brilliant flare of light suddenly erupts through the canopy above, drawing a gasp as someone recognizes Chris's magic. Before anyone can stop him, Apriuto surges forward, vanishing into the dark forest to answer the distress call. The group freezes in disbelief as they realize he actually left, sprinting straight toward the magical flare. Shifting into crisis mode, they quickly assign lookout and resource duties, realizing he must be rushing to rescue someone in extreme danger. One member notes with chilling clarity that his instant, hesitation-free reaction means he already knew about the disturbance before anyone else, just as someone approaches Browser for a private word. In the quiet aftermath of the battle, Princess Leone approaches the ARC faction members with her maid trailing behind. She hesitates for a moment before earnestly asking them what they truly think of ARC, her expression searching for an answer she can't find on her own. Days earlier, inside the Reincarnated church, a shadowy group plots their sacred mission to eradicate the deeply entrenched evil of the Archdukedom. Absolute Arc is singled out as the primary threat, with an elder gravely warning that ignoring a power that surpasses the hero will lead to irreversible consequences. A woman in religious vestments coolly agrees, stating they must cut down Arc's power before a certain point arrives. A dark-haired man reports that Princess Leone has been successfully placed in Absolute's group and their route is locked in, leaving the girls completely unaware of the strings being pulled. A pale-haired man voices his agreement with the assassination plan, earning a knowing smile from the nun as something begins to move in the dark. A cold diagram maps out the strategy: unleash a monster horde on an ARC team to force Absolute Arc to abandon his group and rush to their aid. Once isolated, the real trap springs, flashing a horrific vision of him crucified and bleeding on a wooden cross. A young official reveals the darkest layer of the plan. They will assassinate Princess Leone, frame Arc for the tragedy, and execute him for abandoning the scene. The nun finalizes the trap with chilling calm, confirming that framing Arc for the accidental death of foreign royalty guarantees his execution. When a man questions if a mere monster swarm is enough, she flatly reveals they've prepared elite beasts that even knights can't handle to ensure zero survivors. Her inner thoughts betray a personal, venomous grudge, musing on just what happened to make the saint despise Absolute enough to orchestrate this. A young man at the table leans forward, genuinely troubled, and asks if Princess Leone is truly evil. The nun's reply is flat and absolute: she is part of the evil they must destroy. A chilling secret is then whispered, exposing that the Swiroka royal family is secretly connected to a dark organization that trades its own citizens, making Leone's death a necessary purge of a rotten lineage. The young man pushes back hard, arguing that killing a foreign royal will spark a war and pile on more deaths. The nun meets his plea with cold silence before offering a damning, smiling concession: they will spare Princess Leonie's life. He gets exactly what he asked for, but the dark reality remains that everyone else in Arch's group is still going to die. Back in the forest clearing, Princess Leone probes Browza, admitting she has poor impressions of Arch. Browza sighs heavily, acknowledging Arch's terrifying power to defeat a hero, but her voice drips with bitter disappointment. She confesses her frustration that despite that strength, he arrogantly leans back and uses all of them as shields, revealing a deep fracture in his followers' loyalty. Princess Leone makes a firm declaration: if Arch is truly oppressing them, she will offer her support. Browza's guard cracks slightly, admitting they've realized the princess and her group are bad people. Leone then drops a quiet bombshell, revealing her true identity as a foreign princess and offering to help save them, a gesture of trust that leaves her maid watching with a soft, sad smile. Browza offers a gentle smile and firmly declines the offer, stating it won't be necessary. The scene pulls back to reveal the entire Arch faction standing united in resolute agreement, declaring that everyone in the faction loves Absolute Sama. Princess Leone is left visibly shaken and confused, completely unable to comprehend how they can still look up to a man who treats them so poorly. Desperate to understand, Princess Leone asks Browza directly what kind of person Arch truly is to them. Browza pauses, letting the weight of the silence hang before answering softly that he is a hero. Leonie's breath catches in pure shock, the words sounding entirely impossible given everything she knows, as Browza turns to address her formally, ready to reshape everything the princess believes. Browza delivers the devastating truth: Absolute Sama actively dislikes fighting. Princess Leone's composure cracks wide open, her brain stuttering as she stammers in pure, unfiltered shock, unable to process that the terrifying center of a deadly conspiracy avoids using his power. Browza's smile doesn't waver as she highlights the paradox, asking how someone can possess such strength and yet despise the fight. Browza admits this is just her own belief, but reveals the heavy truth behind their isolation: the Arch nobles handle the kingdom's dirty work. Because their tasks are frowned upon, they are universally hated, leading to a bitter memory of their first party in the capital, where they were physically lynched by higher-ranking nobles. Princess Leone listens in horrified empathy, realizing the villains she feared are actually bearing the kingdom's darkest, most cruel burdens. Browza cuts through the disbelief, stating flatly that Absolute Sama is the one who saved them. Flashbacks flood in of Arch, helping them despite their initial fear, commanding them to stay close, revealing his public reputation as a monster is a complete lie. She saw the truth beneath his sour expression. He carries every fight like a crushing burden, leaving Princess Leone stunned silent by the dissonance between the feared tyrant and the reluctant savior. Browza explains that his fierce battle persona is the only time he lets his true feelings show. She reveals the Arch faction's core pact: they agreed to handle any battles within their power themselves, driven by a solemn duty to spare Absolute Sama even a little bit of unhappiness. Princess Leone stares in complete stunned silence, her mind reeling from the revelation of selfless sacrifice behind their villainous reputation. Princess Leone presses deeper, her voice raw as she asks why they would go to such lengths for him. Browza admits she might get scolded, but the truth spills out. It physically pains every member of the faction that Absolute Sama, who puts himself on the line to protect them, is hated by the world. Leonie's composure finally shatters, tears welling in her eyes as she realizes this man chose to become the villain so his people wouldn't suffer, bearing the world's hatred entirely alone. Browza opens her arms to the forest canopy, declaring her only wish is for Lord Absolute to find happiness. Princess Leone stares through lingering tears, finally understanding the sheer depth of Browza's devotion. Browza drops her smile for a second, admitting she was surprised by Leonie's offer to help, especially since everyone always says she looks like a traitor. The full moon casts long shadows as the wind whispers through the trees. Browza wears that warm, knowing smile she reserves only for Absolute Sama. Beside her, a faction companion stares wide-eyed, still reeling from the crushing weight of the truth. Arch chose to bear the world's hatred alone, just to spare his people a fraction of the pain. A massive crash shatters the quiet, shaking the earth and rattling the canopy. Browza and her companion snap to attention, the intimate moment obliterated. A voice tight with panic demands to know what that was, answering her own question before the echo fades. It came from the exact clearing where Leone and the others were standing. Pure horror freezes a faction member's face as she screams that a monster is heading straight for them. Mist struggles under the dead weight of an unconscious companion, their protective barrier completely shattered. The danger isn't just coming, it's already here and it's tearing through the forest. Debris rains through the canopy as something enormous forces its way through the trees. Against the moonlit peaks, it emerges, a minotaur but impossibly huge, muscles corded like steel beneath its skin, horns curving like a death crown. A necklace of fangs hangs from its thick neck, and it drags a massive weapon that shakes the earth with every step. The beast's face fills the night, hollow eyes burning with predatory focus, jagged teeth bared in a promise of death. It closes the distance with terrifying speed, a towering nightmare of muscle and fury. Below, the girls stand frozen on the path, dwarfed by the monster bearing down on them. One stammers in pure terror, unable to form a complete thought. The group locks up, muscles coiling in a desperate, useless defensive stance. The dread is absolute. This thing is stronger than all four of them combined. Then, the horror clicks into place. One of them gasps, eyes wide as the impossible reality sets in, and whispers the name of the nightmare, an ogre. The realization hits like a physical blow. It's not just an ogre, it's an elite class. A short-haired girl stares in dawning terror, recognizing the beast from a culling in the kingdom of Sworoku years ago. The answer to her disbelief comes roaring out of the tree line, the earth trembling under its earth-shaking charge as it barrels straight for the frozen girls. Panic is a luxury they can't afford. A blood-streaked faction member barks an order for Oriana to get Princess Leone to safety, insisting Maria can handle an elite-class monster. Then she turns to face the thundering behemoth alone, planting her feet and vowing to buy them time, fully aware it might cost her everything. Leone grabs Maria's arm, begging her not to throw her life away against the elite ogre. Maria just smiles, calm and confident, promising her maid will protect the princess while she handles the beast. But Leone's protest betrays her new reality. If Maria dies here, Absolute Sama will have to shoulder the blame. The princess who once feared Ark now refuses to let his people bleed for him. Leone's eyes harden with sudden, fierce resolve. She steps in front of the wounded fighter, drawing her sword with a sharp ring of steel. She declares the Sworoku royal family is taught to risk their lives in a crisis. Locking eyes with Maria, she shouts that they fought together today, and as comrades, she won't let her fight alone. The bleeding fighter snaps a sharp command, ordering Oriana to fetch Maria immediately. Before Oriana can run, the warrior shifts her gaze to Leone, ordering the princess to keep her distance. Leone doesn't argue. She gives a firm, resolute acknowledgement, accepting the warrior's protection as the elite monster closes in. A protector's hand tightens on her sword, her voice cutting through the tension as she insists Princess Leone's survival is worth more than anyone else here. Leone holds her ground with a steady nod, but her mind immediately shifts to Braza, a flicker of concern for the others breaking through her battle focus. Maria's hand clamps over Leone's on the sword hilt, physically forcing the princess's grip into a proper killing stance. Her voice is brutal, cutting through the chaos. If Leone doesn't fight with the intent to kill, she will die. The ogre looms over them, a wall of primal fury, and a blade bites deep into flesh, spraying blood across the forest floor. The blade bites true, guided by Maria's brutal lesson, sinking deep into the charging ogre's chest. A sickening crunch echoes as steel pierces thick hide and muscle. Blood sprays in a violent arc, splattering the forest floor. The monster's charge halts mid-stride, its hollow eyes flickering with shock as its own weapon is embedded in its heart. The ogre's roar of agony twists into something far more terrible. It tears the sword from its own chest with a savage snarl, eyes burning with renewed, murderous fury, and raises its massive club overhead. Maria freezes in pure horror. Behind her, Leone's eyes widen as Maria suddenly shoves her aside, screaming at her to run. The club descends, a black blur of death aimed directly at Maria's head. Leone shouts for Maria, who clutches her arm and barks back to worry about herself. The ogre charges, a mask of primal fury. Maria's expression hardens into tactical focus, turning to Leone to declare she'll create a diversion. Leone nods, fear replaced by grim resolve, as Maria dashes into the forest to draw the beast's attention, an ominous light pulsing in the shadows behind her. Maria throws everything into one desperate strike, her scream tearing through the woods as her blade slams into the elite ogre. The impact crackles with force, but the monster doesn't even flinch. It stands there, utterly unmarred, looking down at her with cold, empty eyes. Maria freezes, sword raised, realizing her strongest attack did absolutely nothing. A surge of power ignites at the critical moment. Maria explodes forward, her eyes locked on the target, closing the distance with frightening speed. The blade connects. The ogre's jaw splits open in a tortured, gurgling scream, its massive maw contorted in raw agony as something finally cuts through that invincible hide. Maria shouts in triumph as Leone's blade follows up, cutting the elite ogre and sending the monster roaring in pain as it staggers back. Maria's eyes narrow with tactical focus, noting the damage is severe. With a few more solid hits from the princess, they might actually bring the beast down. Maria grits her teeth, raising her sword to create an opening as the ogre looms overhead, club cocked to crush them. Leonie's eye sharpens, burning with resolve. The ogre twists into a feral snarl, sensing the kill, but Leonie doesn't hesitate. She lunges forward, blade singing through the air, committing fully to the strike with zero fear. Braza watches the incoming attack with pure terror, her warning scream cut short by the sheer scale of the threat. A fighter grits his teeth, sweat flying as he mentally accepts the unavoidable impact. Maria yells for everyone to watch out, but it's too late. A streak of devastating, unavoidable force tears through the air toward them. A warrior screams the princess's name in horror as the elite ogre's attack slams home, not into the fighter, but into the princess who just stepped in front of her. Leone takes the full, brutal impact, thrown back against a tree with a sickening crunch. The warrior drops to her knees, voice breaking with fury and guilt, screaming at the fallen princess for covering her when she was told to prioritize her own life. The dust settles. Braza sits slumped against a tree, blood and grime streaking her uniform, murmuring hollowly that a bad guy like her doesn't deserve to be saved. Leonie's hand closes over hers, firm and immediate, answering without hesitation that it's not true at all. Braza's face crumbles, tears carving clean lines through the dirt as Leonie softly tells her she's a kind person who genuinely wishes for Art's happiness. Leone gently holds the sobbing Braza, her voice soft but firm, refusing to let the woman call herself bad. Braza looks up, tears streaming, as the words sink in. Leonie's hand grips her sword hilt, then rests on her torn uniform, splattered with dark blood, the silent, brutal evidence of the sacrifice she'd just made to shield a woman she barely knew. The elite ogre's cavernous maw roars, its hollow eye locking onto Maria. With speed that defies its massive frame, it swings its club in a devastating overhead arc. Maria barely throws herself aside, the club missing her by a hair's breadth before slamming into the forest floor. The earth-shattering impact creates a crater of splintered wood and flying dirt. A new voice cuts through the chaos, apologizing for the delay. A maid in a stained, once pristine uniform steps into the moonlight, a heavy axe resting casually in her grip. Behind her, the wounded Braza stares in disbelief. The maid's eyes are sharp, assessing the survivors, her arrival a silent promise that the tide is about to turn. The maid from Ark's household walks toward a collapsed fighter, her uniform stained dark with blood. The wounded woman looks up, her face breaking into a tearful, relieved smile as she breathes the maid's name. Maria looks back, her own face streaked with grime and cuts, but her eyes are soft. After the near-death strikes and Leonie's sacrifice, just seeing each other standing is enough. The fighters kneel before the blood-soaked maid, voices raw with gratitude. Someone asks if Maria is all right, and the close-up catches her battered face shifting at the concern. She explains she fought through multiple ogres on the way, apologizing for her disheveled state. The others thank her for worrying about them, while one fighter quietly reflects that battling multiple elite monsters proves Maria is truly amazing. The maid kneels over Princess Leone, clinically stating she's lucky to be alive. Braza, face streaked with guilt, explains the princess was injured covering for her. The maid confirms it's a lower back injury, not life-threatening, but her expression quickly hardens. She orders a rapid retreat, dropping the chilling revelation that a horde of monsters is heading straight for them. Ark's eyes snap open in the canopy, cold and analytical. The forest erupts below him, dozens of elite monsters surging through the trees like a black tide. He watches the swarm, his expression tightening as the cold truth settles in. Multiple elite monsters appearing at this exact moment isn't a coincidence, it's a calculated trap, and he's right in the middle of it. Maria carries the wounded, barely conscious Leone on her back as the distant trees rustle with the approaching horde. A young fighter states the obvious dread: if the swarm attacks at once, they're dead. The maid from Ark's household steps forward, her back to the group, and announces she will hold back the horde alone. She orders Maria to take the princess to headquarters, her posture radiating finality. The maid activates a massive barrier, enclosing the forest clearing. Maria screams in protest, her voice cracking as she asks if the maid is planning to die, insisting she can't handle that many monsters alone. But the maid remains stoic, her decision already made, the barrier sealing the fate of the battlefield. The maid raises a hand with a bright, chilling smile, declaring she has zero intention of dying, but this is exactly her job. She can confine the monsters with the barrier. Her gaze turns stern and final, reminding them that if Princess Leone dies, Absolute Sama will be held accountable. Braza clutches at her, tears streaming, begging her to stop, but the maid just turns away, focused on the incoming horde. The maid turns back toward the horde, telling Maria she saved her life earlier and can't let that debt go unpaid. Maria's face crumbles, tears flooding her eyes as she screams that it's unnecessary, begging the maid to just come back with all of them. The maid walks away, back steady, telling Maria not to worry because Absolute Sama will be back in roughly 10 minutes. Mist flashes a brave, tear-streaked smile, giving her final words to the group. If she doesn't make it, make sure people know how cool she was. She gently urges Maria and the others forward. Maria stumbles away, looking back over her shoulder as Mist turns to face the oncoming horde alone. Maria screams her name, but the maid doesn't look back. Browza, tears streaming, tells Mist with heartbreaking honesty that she can't lie and say she was cool. Instead, she demands that Mist come back alive. Mist, her back turned, gives a silent nod and a warm smile. Maria screams Browza's name in desperate protest, but Mist's gentle smile is the last thing they see before she faces the dark forest. Mist walks into the dark forest alone. Maria screams from behind, but the others are frozen, watching their friend march to her death. In a tight close-up, Mist's eyes are wide and teary, her expression one of absolute, heartbreaking resolve. She mouths, "I'm sorry," once, then again, and again, a silent apology to the trees as she leaves the group to collapse in grief. Mist activates her skill, unleashing a thick, swirling fog that blankets the clearing. She stands alone in the haze, poised for the battle ahead. A close-up catches her face, smiling with brave determination, but sweat beading on her forehead. She acknowledges the desperation, her voice steady as she declares it's time to make a last-ditch effort. Mist stands in the swirling fog, wolf-eared monsters closing in from all sides. She knows fighting hundreds at once means instant death. But her grip tightens. Her blade bites through flesh, echoing in the mist. Her new plan is to pick them off one by one, hundreds of times. Even if the chance is as thin as a thread, she'll take it. Mist is being overrun. Winged monsters dive from above while wolf-eared creatures snap at her heels. She fights with desperate fury, slashing one only to be swarmed by 3 more. Exhaustion and frustration mount as she snarls internally, needing to survive just 10 minutes until Arc returns, but every monster she cuts down is replaced by 2 more. Mist gasps for air, her body a mess of wounds, the weight of her decision crashing down on her. Standing amidst the carnage, her voice cuts through the fog with chilling certainty. She declares the wicked don't get to choose where they die, and she's going to put it on Absolute Sama's terms. Her resolve hardens into something feral, delivering a message with every strike. Wounded and breathing hard, Mist channels the strength of her master. She thinks that if it were Absolute Sama, he wouldn't retreat, but fight to the last moment alone. Drawing on that image, she lets out a fierce battle cry, cleaving through another wolf-eared monster. She shouts, "Next!" over and over, her blade a blur in a desperate, self-driven rhythm fueled by Aprayuto's indomitable will. Mist is struck down mid-battle. The blow catches her hard, sending her body flying backward through the air, limbs flailing. Her maid uniform billows around her, sword still clutched in her hand, but she's completely overpowered. She hurtles toward the ground with no control, finally overwhelmed by the sheer force of the horde she swore to hold back. The scene shifts to a sunlit memory. A winding path leads toward a distant castle under a sky where a dragon soars. A young girl's voice reflects on a childhood dream shared with everyone to become like the heroes from her stories. She is shown as a child utterly engrossed in a book, a blissful smile on her face as she loses herself in tales of heroism. Young Mist sits curled in a library surrounded by towers of books, her face soft with innocent joy. But the dream curdles. A sword lies abandoned on the ground beside her small, defeated form. She whispers that she has no talent, realizing she could never be a hero because she's one of the bad guys. The words echo, drowning out the girl who once believed she could be anything. A hand carefully moves a chess piece. A light-haired woman questions Aprayuto directly, asking why he feels guilty about his duty despite his immense power. She presses deeper, leaning in close as she asks whether killing people for the sake of the country isn't considered righteous in the kingdom of Reincarnated. The question hangs heavy in the sunlit garden. Aprayuto's eyes stare down the woman as she confronts him, declaring that anyone who takes a life is evil, no matter the reason. She leans in, saying those words don't suit someone who's taken so many lives. Aprayuto counters that life carries great weight. The woman closes her eyes, weary, telling him to forget it as foolish talk, leaving his moral challenge hanging in the silence. The chess game continues in loaded silence. The woman watches Aprayuto, wrestling with the contradiction of how a boy who has taken lives since childhood can still treat life as precious. Aprayuto sips his tea, internally concluding her sense of morality is fundamentally off. The woman voices her judgment aloud, quiet but firm. Absolute is too compassionate. Aprayuto considers the secession idea with terrifying sincerity, suggesting it might not be a bad idea once everything is taken care of. The light-haired woman's composure shatters into nervous laughter and sweat as she frantically backpedals. She tries to spin it as a positive, noting that if they secede, he won't have to handle corpse disposal anymore. Abriuto drops his chess piece with cold precision, declaring checkmate. He stares into the distance, casually confirming he will give the secession idea serious thought. He leans in, asking her to keep this a secret just between the two of them. Abriuto places another piece, calmly agreeing to keep their treasonous talk a secret. The woman breaks into a wide, nervous smile, laughing to hide her shock as the real agreement settles between them. Mist crashes into the dirt, her sword clattering away as her broken body hits the ground. She forces herself onto her knees, trembling and gasping, refusing to die just yet. She stands swaying, fists clenched against the towering monster before her. A final, crushing blow buries Mist under the monster horde, her sword slipping from her grasp. With her last ounce of strength, she screams Absolute Sama's name into the void. The scene cuts to a stark white space where Abriuto stands alone, his only regret being the person he left behind. A boot steps onto the blood-soaked ground as Ark arrives, dispatching the remaining monsters. He tells Mist she did well, and to leave the rest to him, his promise absolute. Mist finally allows her body to crumple, her duty fulfilled. A vortex of absolute annihilation tears through the monster horde, ripping bodies upward into the void. The forest clearing becomes a churning slaughterhouse as every creature is violently disintegrated. Abriuto's eye burns with cold, absolute control as he unleashes his dark hole. Mist's fading consciousness locks onto Abriuto, standing amidst the complete devastation he wrought. She lets out a soft sound of profound relief, her trembling fingers reaching out to confirm he is real. The nightmare is finally over. Mist's eyes flutter open to find Ark holding her securely, asking if she is awake. Tears stream down her face as she chokes out his name in overwhelming gratitude. Ark shifts into a dry smirk, telling her she took her time and her impudence knows no bounds. Ark carries Mist bridal style through the clearing, completely unfazed by her mortified squirming. He sets her down and warns her that healing magic doesn't restore endurance. Mist plants her feet, teeth clenched and sweating, stubbornly declaring she can walk. Walking through the moonlit forest, the light-haired woman recounts the unnatural escalation of the monster attacks. She presses Ark with a searching look, voicing her suspicion that the entire event was orchestrated. She asks if he has any idea what is actually going on. The woman's voice carries a sharp edge as she tells Mist she is frustrated they didn't rely on her. Mist retorts that they are in this together, insisting Ark could have relied on her for once. Ark simply states it was necessary, leaving Mist to look away in defeated silence. Ark calmly reveals that the monstrous attack was something the church had planned all along. He drops the real bombshell, warning that the church likely has moles within the academy, and even among his own allies. The woman freezes in horror as Ark adds he's keeping an eye out for those collaborators. Ark explains he kept his plan secret to prevent interference, confirming that even Maria was kept in the dark because she is bad at lying. He admits he noticed an anomaly, stating he cannot confide in anyone when he doesn't know who his true allies are. The air thickens with unspoken paranoia as the trust between them is tested. The woman teases him about sharing his suspicions with her, asking if he is sure he shouldn't be keeping it from her too. Ark flatly states that if she were an enemy, it would be a catastrophic leak, but he doesn't think of her as one. She notes he comes across as shallow, making him mutter that it is rough to hear. Ark tells her plainly that she threw herself into a swarm of monsters for her companions, so he has no reason to doubt her. The woman looks up at the night sky, her face softening into quiet relief. They arrive back on familiar ground as the immediate crisis ends. The group arrives at the academy campsite, where Mist is laid up resting in a tent. A young boy bursts out calling for Absolute Sama and Mist, while Maria sits outside, exhausted but grateful. Mist stirs from her forced rest, her eyes finally opening. Princess Leone panics, shouting for Browza as he steps forward with a calm, reassuring smile. He explains that Absolute Sama rescued him, but Leone's composure breaks instantly. She rushes forward, hands on his shoulders, demanding to know if he is hurt. Leone pulls Browza into a desperate, tight hug, burying her face against his shoulder as her body trembles. A sharp, alarmed cry cuts through the air as the onlookers realize who is holding him. Leone mutters that the situation is definitely not good, flustered and trying to ward something off. Browza pulls her into a gentle hug from behind, patting her head until she melts for a second. She snaps back to arm's length, blushing furiously and letting out a stubborn sound of frustration. Browza stammers, begging her to let go while trying to maintain his composure. Ark watches the messy reunion with detached calm, utterly unmoved by the raw display of emotion. Leone pulls back just enough to meet his eyes, screaming that she won't let go. Leone confesses that thinking he might have died shielding her makes her feel truly guilty, but above all, she is just so glad he is alive. She pulls back to look at him, tears streaming freely down her face as she repeats her relief. The raw vulnerability of a princess who just realized how much she stands to lose hangs in the air. Brasa holds the blushing princess with a gentle smile, his internal thoughts focused entirely on helping her settle down. Ark watches from a distance, completely unfazed by the emotional reunion. Mist appears, calling out to Ark, whose thoughts immediately darken as he senses impending trouble. Ark tells Brasa with a calm, final tone that he is a hero who risked his life for the princess and should accept the embrace. Brasa is stunned, internally reflecting that his only goal was making sure she got away safely. Ark stands nearby, idly reading a book as if witnessing a mildly interesting everyday occurrence. Leone calls out to Mist with raw sincerity, thanking her and saying she is really glad she is safe. Clutching a book to her chest, she wonders aloud if she became a hero too, just to stand side by side with the one she admires. Mist sees the parallel, realizing both of them have bled for the people they are devoted to. Before the monster attack, the Ark faction's Class B members wander through the forest near Group F's route. A braided girl searches for something specific, while a light-haired boy watches her from the tree line. A sudden flash of white light erupts from deep in the forest, signaling the exact moment the ambush started. Chris sits calmly by a campfire, his gaze steady and his hand tense with anticipation. The peaceful scene is instantly obliterated as the landscape erupts into utter devastation. Massive debris and ruins scatter across the ravaged ground from a brutal, instantaneous attack. A stunningly beautiful girl with long, light hair appears, greeting the stunned Ark faction with a cheerful bow. One of the boys recognizes her as Christina Sama from the Zenducal household, his voice trembling at her high-ranking status. Christina confirms it with a serene, happy smile, noting it is fancy running into them here. Chris Jose steps forward, demanding what business a Zenducal has being out here completely alone. Christina clasps her hands, claiming she was simply taking a walk and happened to spot her friend's retainers. Chris is incredulous that she was strolling alone in a monster-infested forest, but Christina just smiles and pivots to mention her friend. Christina drops her playful deflection, cheerfully announcing she is talking about Absolute Kun. The facade of a chance encounter evaporates with the name drop. Chris Jose's expression instantly hardens, his eyes narrowing with cold certainty as he flatly rejects the claim as a lie. Christina insists she is really Absolute Kun's friend, claiming they often talk in their free time and get along very well. Chris's patience snaps, shouting that Absolute Sama quietly spends his time reading books and would never speak to someone like her. Christina looks slightly deflated but keeps smiling, murmuring that she is telling the truth. Chris's gaze sharpens as he leans in, asking Christina exactly what she is after. Christina's smile remains perfectly bright and unbothered as she cheerfully deflects. She claims she simply wants to hear his perspective on Absolute Kun because Ark hardly ever talks about himself. Christina drops the playful facade, her voice turning sharp and serious as she walks away from Chris. She states that her reason for seeking information about Ark is simple. She wants to judge what kind of person he truly is. The scene ends on a tense, unfinished beat as something is revealed with a soft pop. Christina declares she wants to know more about Ark as his friend and as his rival, her polite mask replaced by a challenger's edge. She leans in, asking if that clarifies things for him. The blunt declaration hits like a physical blow, leaving Chris and his companion staggering back in visible shock. Christina leans against a railing, calmly admitting she's been listening in on their conversation for a while. An animal-eared faction member steps forward, snarling that Christina is just using them to size up their boss. Another member's eye fills the frame, wide with rage as they threaten to murder her. An explosion of force sends Eurus Kokuto violently hurling backward through the air. A light-haired boy struggles to hold him back, shouting in disbelief, while a twin-tailed girl coolly assesses Eurus as a mad cat. A dark-haired boy's eyes burn with pure venom as he spits a cutting question at the restrained Eurus. The cat-eared faction member has Christina by the collar, snarling in her face. She doesn't flinch, her eyes cold as she tells him to get his paws off her. She warns that if he insists on a fight, she will have to show him the difference in their standing as a high-ranking noble. Eurus Kokuto lunges with killing intent, but Christina doesn't even blink as his full-power attack whiffs completely. She stands perfectly still, her expression one of bored disappointment as the strike tears through the air beside her face. The moment shatters when Eurus, face splattered with blood, whirls to scream that there are monsters. Christina's voice turns cold and alert as she announces they are already surrounded. Chris and his group stare in disbelief as a horde of monsters crashes through the tree line from every direction. The creatures appear with absolutely no precursor, a silent trap springing shut around them all. Christina raises a small device, firing a signal flare into the night sky to make Absolute Sama come. Chris Jose's face twists in horrified realization, stammering that Ark will be drawn right into the monster horde. Christina's expression remains a mask of serene control as she announces their tactic to split into two groups. Christina unleashes a devastating wall of fire that roars through the forest, incinerating monsters wholesale. Trees buckle and beasts disintegrate into ash as Chris watches, frozen in stunned disbelief. Christina's voice cuts through the roar, ordering them to fall back while she handles every monster behind them. Eurus whirls around with a desperate warning, but Christina remains perfectly poised amidst the chaos. She tells Chris his worry isn't necessary, dismissing their protest that this is reckless even for an A rank. Flames flicker within her eye as she coolly declares that the Zendukal household is a lineage favored by fire. Wreathed in roaring flames, Christina declares she is particularly skilled at complete eradication. She warns Chris and Eurus to get moving immediately, noting she might accidentally set them on fire if they stay. Eurus strains against his restrainer, shouting that he is staying to take care of the rest. The cat-eared subordinate growls, asking if letting her remain won't affect Ark and the faction in the future. Christina questions whether this person is even qualified to be called a friend of the boss. The subordinate's grin widens into something predatory as he declares he will be the one to judge for himself. Christina coolly tells Chris to come along so nothing gets in her way, ignoring Eurus's defiant snapping. Her voice suddenly cuts through the tension, urgently commanding Chris to get his act together as the leader. Chris bows his head in shame, apologizing and asking her to take care of Eurus. Christina informs a stunned Eurus that she never actually said she would fight alongside him. She accepts his challenge on one condition: if he defeats every monster before her, she might tell him about Ark. Eurus's eyes sharpen with determination as Christina's calculating smile confirms the deadly race is on. Christina formally kicks off their duel, telling Cockatoo she is counting on a good match. Her fire magic immediately erupts in a blinding explosion, obliterating a cluster of monsters. She stands amidst the carnage, noting it will take quite a bit of time to clear the horde. Eurus screams that a ton of monsters are breaking off and heading straight for Chris and the others. Christina stands at the center of a wasteland of ashen bodies, completely untouched by the chaos. A faint, cold smile touches her lips as she admits, it is a lot to deal with, sizing up the challenge. Eurus activates a hidden power, his body contorting into a feral beast form with a guttural roar. His companion screams in alarm, warning that they need to hurry or Chris will be in danger. A tight close-up lands on Christina, her cool control cracking as a simple shot sound escapes her lips. Christina stands frozen as a monstrous shape hurtles toward her with terrifying speed. Her composure completely shatters, blurting out that this is cheating. The beast slams into her with a brutal, visceral impact, leaving her breathless and her earlier calculations utterly inadequate. A massive, tiger-like beast explodes into motion, claws slash through the air with lethal speed. The creature's full form hurtles forward in a blur of muscle and fury, tearing through everything in its path. The beast's charge connects with a brutal impact, shattering Christina's composure. The forest clearing is reduced to a wasteland of ash and monster corpses. Christina and Eurus lie exhausted on the ground. Is it finished? She breathes. Yeah, he confirms. Staring at the towering mound of slain beasts, Christina admits her stunned disbelief. I'm surprised by your skill. Isn't that cheating? Christina sighs in exasperation. Eurus's beast form obliterated everything so fast it wiped out her kills too. You even took my praise, she says flatly. The match is over before it starts. Eurus manages a sharp HA in disbelief. Christina coolly dismisses it as just beast form. Immobilized by the transformation, Eurus grins with feral audacity. Since I can't move for a while, let's just call this a draw. You lose by foul play. Christina stares at a massive tiger prowling nearby, a dangerous idea forming in the back of her mind. The aftermath settles over the exhausted group. Christina stands tall, her massive wolf-like beast form looming behind her. She casually explains that the beast folk made back at Archplace is even stronger and bigger, putting her on a completely different level. Eurus lies on the ground, utterly stunned. You're kidding, right? He wheezes. Across the devastated battlefield, someone notes that the tough one has gone off, hoping the others will manage. Another reassures them that as long as the boss is on the way, they should be fine. A pointed-eared character grins confidently. That's an incredible amount of trust. Another figure smirks in agreement. They turn to walk into the dark woods. Alrighty then, we also should. Eyes snap wide with sudden, horrified shock as a loud, jarring sound rings out. A blade bursts through the elf-eared woman's abdomen. Blood seeps across her uniform as she staggers. A beast man snarls in outraged shitty. Woman! With blood trickling from her mouth, she glares defiantly. You've gone too far, both of you. Christina's face lights up with pure, childish joy. She calls out to her parents, boasting about being chosen as a potential fiancé for Prince Michael and proudly announcing a new magic spell. She reaches out, begging them to look at her, but they turn away. Her joyful expression shatters. Tears and dark, chaotic energy consume her as she screams a heartbroken plea, "Love me." The memory fractures into a dark maelstrom, cutting to the present. Christina stands with blood trickling from her mouth, her eyes hollow and dead. The elf-eared woman crumples forward, a blade buried deep in her abdomen. Her attacker pressed in close from behind, the strike so clean she never saw it coming. The beast man whips around, his snarl catching in his throat as he finally sees who did this. His eyes widen with horrified recognition. "You are one of the Saints' Guard?" The traitor isn't some random enemy. They've been standing right there the whole time, trusted enough to get close enough to kill. A figure with a spear confronts Christina. He coldly states his name is Evan, suggesting she should at least remember her classmates' names. Christina, shaken, admits she didn't even sense his presence. Evan dismisses her, apologizing only for having no reason to remember the names of the weak. The tension snaps as Yura's Kokudo is aggressively shoved to the ground by a furious comrade screaming his name. The elf-eared woman crumples as the blade buries deeper. Blood bursts from the wound. Tears stream down her face as she collapses, one hand pressed weakly against the earth. She looks up with eyes full of anguish and betrayal, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you doing something like this?" The confusion cuts deeper than the blade. Someone she trusted wearing the same colors turned on them. Evan holds his sword ready, his voice cold and detached. He tells Christina not to struggle, he's just carrying out commands. Christina gasps, blood dripping from her mouth. In the background, a comrade screams at someone to just kill that bitch already. Christina's hand trembles violently as she struggles to hold herself up, her face twisted in strain. A point-blank fireball shatters the air, detonating against its target. The girl who unleashed it stands firm, watching the explosion. A dark, monstrous figure charges straight through the smoke and debris, taking a massive step forward. Terrified, wide eyes stare in disbelief, a whisper trembling on the lips. "Impossible, Im?" The beastman roars through the chaos. "Shitty woman!" he screams, charging forward with reckless fury. He takes Christina's magic head on, muscle straining, face twisted in pure aggression. Christina watches, horrified and enraged. "Charging in while tanking my magic? Do you have no regard for your life?" Evan's voice drips with contempt. He tells Christina she's unlucky for choosing the Arc faction, and now she dies. Christina's body trembles in his grip. He's impossibly strong, and she's doomed. Evan pulls her closer, his smile turning predatory. He whispers that since the opportunity is here, he might as well have some fun with her, Christina-sama. Christina's raw, fragmented memories flood her mind. Her parents turn their backs on her desperate pleas. Instructors shout that she's too weak. A noblewoman screams at young Christina for matching the color of her dress. The recollection dissolves into darkness as Christina admits she directed all her pent-up frustration at the people around her. Reality snaps back. Christina's eyes widen with a jolt of horrified recognition, her own painful past suddenly laid bare. Memory takes her back to childhood. A tiny girl stands alone in a vast noble hall. By the time she realized what was happening, everyone had already left her side. She turns and sees a boy walking away, solitary and guarded. That's when she came across Absolute Arc. Young Arc stands surrounded by his companions, but his posture is isolated. He was someone just as alone as she was. She didn't follow him for politics. She found a mirror of her own pain. And now, bleeding on the forest floor, that memory hits different. Christina's face crumples as the weight of her betrayal breaks through. She sees Arc's companions alive and united. He was no longer alone. His solitude had ended. But her own? Lying there, bleeding out in the dirt, a thought tears through her. Is she just going to die alone like this? Christina lies broken on the forest floor, clutching her wound as blood seeps through her fingers. Above her, a dark, monstrous silhouette looms. With a guttural roar, it unleashes a devastating attack. Dark hole. The words echo like a death sentence. A companion stares in wide-eyed horror, utterly paralyzed by the sheer force of the assault. Christina's fury erupts. She demands Evan explain himself, her voice raw with betrayal. He simply walks toward her through the trees, a cold, inevitable presence. Meanwhile, monstrous black hands claw at the fallen form of Chris Jose, their grip tightening around his skull. The hands pull, refusing to let go. A single hand hovers near a weapon on the ground, inches away from grasping it. The Beastman surges forward in a blur of speed and rage. A massive crash erupts as fists connect with devastating force. Trees splinter, the ground shakes. The dust settles, revealing Arc standing over the fallen, his body battered, dark energy crackling across his wounded form. His jaw clenches tight. Damn it, Absolute! The rage in his voice is the sound of watching people he cares about get torn apart. Christina lies crumpled beside him. Arc is done holding back. A massive, brutal strike sends a figure flying. "Arc!" Someone shouts. Ark stands utterly calm amidst the devastation. Eyes closed, book in hand, he channels a dark energy that blasts outward, sending figures tumbling through the forest. He isn't even looking at the chaos. His hands deliberately close the book he was holding. The attack is over. He's finished reading. Eurus clutches his cloak, voice raw with relief as he thanks the boss. Apryuto arrives, breathless, apologizing for being late. Eurus breaks down, tears streaming, stammering that the boss came to rescue them. Apryuto asks if he's alright. The emotion overflows as Eurus lunges forward, wrapping Apryuto in a desperate hug. He sobs an apology, confessing he can't believe he almost let the enemies have their way with him. Mist clings to Ark, tears streaming, desperate to fix everything. I'll do something to make it look like it never happened. Ark cuts her off cold. Forget it. She chokes out a tearful "okay" through gritted fangs. Ark turns away, his expression shifting to something harder. Well then, he says, facing the broken bodies of the fallen. You tainted holy knights, do you have any last words? A monstrous horned figure strains against invisible bonds. Release us from these hands. Absolute Ark, it bellows. Ark remains utterly still, arms crossed. This berserker state, the loss of sanity, it's exactly what he suspected. The saint's incitement skill forced this rampage. Ark stands over the defeated Evan. You there. Do you really think you'll be forgiven for laying a hand on nobles like Christina and Eurus? Evan clutches his head in agony, weakly gasping his name in defiance. The priest stands smugly in front of the church, declaring they're under its protection. He won't talk until their saint arrives, confident their actions were justified. His arrogance shatters as Ark turns with a chilling, flat expression. No, he says, voice devoid of warmth. I'm going to kill you all here. A light-haired companion lets out a stunned, disbelieving, "Ha?" as the weight of the promise lands like a death sentence. Ark stands with his back to the group, arms crossed. Didn't you hear me? I said I'm going to kill all of you here. I don't need your information. His eyes are wide and unblinking. I'll kill all of you right here. Evan is struck dumb with terror. Kill us? Your classmates? A man in a formal uniform suddenly appears, holding a clipboard. He announces himself as a negotiator. Ark turns to face him. What are you talking about? The negotiator simply confirms, yes. The hooded negotiator delivers the news. The archbishop suspected of controlling the creature has been detained. The church protection the priest was banking on is gone. Ark strolls toward the cluster of defeated holy knights. He says flatly that he can finish them off without holding back. One of the kneeling figures stammers. Are you really going to kill us? Ark's boots step forward. His voice is calm, almost amused. That's obvious. After all, I'm evil, aren't I? Ark's name echoes through the chaos. Someone screams absolute Ark as a hand reaches out desperately. Then darkness swallows Christina whole. A monstrous voice roars dark hole and she's engulfed, her face twisted in raw terror. It's annihilation. But underneath it all, one thought surfaces. If justice is weak, it's no better than evil, or worse. Christina chose Ark because his willingness to be the villain was the only real protection. Watching justice fail, that conviction hardens into something irreversible. Ark's face is seen from behind, his dark hair obscuring his expression as he stares down at the defeated holy knights. His eyes burn with cold fury. His voice cuts through the silence, a promise of annihilation. I am the evil here. He looms over the broken figures on the ground, his declaration hanging in the air like a death sentence. You tainted holy knights. Eyes flutter open in the darkness. Consciousness seeps back slowly. The first thing they see is the underside of a tent. Confusion washes in. A voice reaches them, calm and almost amused. You awake now? They turn to see Eurus Kokuto lounging casually, looking thoroughly relaxed. His sharp teeth flash in a grin as he confirms his identity with theatrical flair. Eurus Kokuto, you're right, that's me. Eurus leans in, demanding if she even understands what just happened. Christina sits up in a cot, dazed. Eurus explains he transported her to the base after the Holy Knights almost killed her, but the boss saved her. Absolute Kun did? She murmurs. He confirms the boss also cast the healing magic. Christina looks down, her expression unreadable. I see. She realizes she ended up owing him a debt from back then. Her silence stretches on, and a small, annoyed Eurus grumbles, You're ignoring me, huh? Word spreads through the camp like a chill. The field exercise is cancelled. It wasn't just their group that was ambushed. Ark's group and the Saints group were attacked by monsters too. The horror behind that announcement is revealed in a grim forest clearing. Bodies lie scattered and broken across the dirt. The Saints group has been nearly wiped out. A light-haired character turns, a sharp question cutting through the air. Hey, what happened to the Holy Knights who attacked us? Eurus leans in, his expression serious. Do you really want to know that? Christina's reply is immediate and final. I'll refrain from prying about that matter. She places a hand over her heart, a gentle, resolute smile on her face. Absolute Kun saved me. That's all I need to know and be satisfied with. Her words are a definitive wall, shutting down any further inquiry. Eurus accepts her stance without argument, letting the heavy topic drop. Christina sits in the medical tent, her expression hardening with a new, cold clarity. She states flatly that she and the noblewomen are completely finished as aristocrats. Eurus scoffs with a grin. Seriously, noblewomen are completely hopeless, huh? He acknowledges that if the attack became public knowledge, it would be over for them. Hey, well, Eurus continues, leaning back. In our case, boss won't stay quiet, so we hardly ever just suffer in silence. Christina presses for answers about Ark. How did he go from seeming completely alone within his own faction to earning the loyalty of everyone around him? The light-haired elf tilts their head. The answer isn't grand. Their duel with Ark ended in a draw. When Eurus huffs at that non-answer, the elf tries again. Maybe it was simply time. Spending time together. Letting things build gradually. Eurus repeats the phrase back with sharp incredulity. Your time? Eurus continues his explanation, his voice carrying a hint of nostalgic warmth. It was really just a simple misunderstanding. Everyone had the wrong idea about their boss. Memory shows younger versions of the faction members in a courtyard, curious and uncertain. The person who first realized the truth worked tirelessly to fix their collective misunderstanding. It took time, but the gap between perception and reality finally closed. Earning trust wasn't about grand gestures, it was just patience and someone willing to bridge the divide. Christina sits quietly on the bed, processing the explanation. I see, so that's how it is. Eurus observes her reaction, his gaze sharpening slightly. So his surroundings have changed, huh? A flood of memories fills Christina's mind. Her own past, the faces of those she once led, a painful internal truth surfaces. Even with time, she couldn't rebuild her ties with her followers. Her resolve hardens with a bleak realization. As she is now, she won't be able to change. Christina gives Eurus a soft, grateful smile. I've come to a conclusion thanks to you. A quiet resolve settles in her eyes. The one who had to change was her. Eurus leans back, casually mentioning that the boss is outside and has a message for her. Christina looks up, a flicker of surprise on her face. A message from Absolute Kun? Outside the tent, Ark stands waiting under the trees. Ark stands with a composed, calculating expression. You took care of my underlings this time, he states coolly. I'll make sure to repay this debt. Eurus relays the message directly to Christina. The words hit her, leaving her stunned and breathless. A debt, she repeats softly. She wobbles on unsteady feet, trying to move despite her weakened state. Her companion barks in alarm. Hey, where are you planning to go wobbling like that? Christina steps out from behind a tree to face Ark. She tells him she's heard what happened and thanks him for saving them. Ark stands with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Chris Jose steps forward, bowing his head respectfully. He insists that he should be the one thanking Ark for saving him and the others. Ark maintains his cool stance as their gratitude piles the weight of debt onto him. The night air is still as Christina and Chris Jose formally thank Ark. Chris Jose bows low, insisting he owes the deepest gratitude for his life and the others. Ark stands with his arms crossed, taking in their words without a hint of warmth or acknowledgement. Christina watches him, witnessing the full weight of the debt settling onto Ark's shoulders in silence. Christina's face breaks into a radiant smile as she extends her hand toward Chris Jose. I'd like us to be friends, she declares. Her eyes gleam with quiet calculation. If we're friends, you don't owe me for what happened earlier, do you? She's weaponizing friendship itself, using warmth to dissolve the debt. Chris Jose stands there, visibly caught off guard. She softens it with a casual smile. We're classmates after all. Then, explosive shock rings out. What do you mean? Christina just casually turned a life debt into a handshake. Christina's face breaks into a radiant smile as she extends her hand toward Chris Jose. I'd like us to be friends, she declares, her expression bright and open. Then comes the real move. Her eyes gleam with quiet calculation as she adds, if we're friends, you don't owe me for what happened earlier, do you? She's weaponizing friendship itself, using warmth to dissolve the debt that's been piling up. Chris Jose stands there, visibly caught off guard, the weight of her words sinking in. She softens it with a casual smile, reminding him, we're classmates after all. Her hand is still outstretched, waiting. Then, wham! The final panel. What do you mean? Someone shouts in explosive shock, completely blindsided by the implications of what she just did. Christina just casually turned a line, and that's where this part leaves us. If you want to see whether Christina's story really ends here, hit subscribe and check back for the next part.